Good morning, folks, and thank you for your patience. We're running just a few minutes behind this morning. This January the 10th meeting of the Nags Head Board of Commissioners will please come to order. If you will, please join me in a brief moment of silence. And if you will now, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. I will say that if you don't mind, and I think Roberta has alerted everyone that after the recognitions this morning and we're going to ask the awardees to please stay around for just a minute, and we will do photographs after public comment when there's kind of a natural break in the meeting there. So a motion to adopt the agenda would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The next item on our agenda this morning is recognitions. Cliff?
Yes, sir. First, we'll start off with the reigning 2017 Earl Murray Employee of the Year. We'll get Ralph to come up and give a presentation to Mr. Durante White.
Yeah. Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. We had to take the keys out of the truck last night, so make sure Durante was here today. Once he gets started, it's hard to get him to stop, as you see in your last meeting. But anyway, without holding up the meeting, without any further ado, it's my honor and pleasure to present Durante White, the Earl Murray Jr. 2017 Employee of the Year. Thank you.
Wonderful. Durante, we're going to give you your plaque back, if we can, and then we'll do a photograph. If you don't mind staying for just a few minutes, but I want to go ahead and give you this. We also have something you didn't get the last time. We have a certificate for you here as well, and we really appreciate you guys taking a break. We realize that you guys start really early. We've interrupted you in the middle of your day, unlike most of us, which are starting our day. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Realize there may be some of the audience that are wondering why we are doing that now, but Durante, ordinarily the board would present this at the December meeting, but Durante, who it's a surprise to the employees that were nominated, and each department nominates an employee. Durante was working when this presentation was going on, and he couldn't get away, and the board will remember, some of the audience, of course, weren't here, but we were waiting for Durante to come up and get the Employee of the Year, but he was out doing his job. So that's why Ralph said, I'm going to make sure, I'm going to take his keys from him, and he's going to be at this meeting, but congratulations to Durante. We've got, I believe, Andy Garman, our Deputy Town Manager, will come up and present a 5-year service award to Steve Szymanski.
Steve?
So I'm happy to be recognizing Mr. Steve Szymanski for his 5 years of service with the town of Nags Head. Steve works with the Planning and Development Department. He is our senior building inspector, started 5 years ago on January 3rd, 2013. Obviously, Steve, he's a very humble person, so I know he wouldn't want me to stand here and talk a lot about him, so I'll try to honor those wishes and be brief. We're certainly grateful for his service. Steve's a very hard worker. Takes his profession and position with the town very seriously, never hesitates to come in early, stay late, or do whatever it takes to get the job done. He's often here on weekends, or basically whenever we need him to be here. He's certainly qualified for his job. He's got level 3 certifications, which are the highest in building, electrical, plumbing, and mechanical. He also has the level 2 fire inspector certification. and Steve is also a certified floodplain manager. Prior to becoming a building inspector, Steve worked as an electrician and still maintains his license as an electrician in the state of North Carolina. He certainly maintains a high status in the planning department with his baking skills, his ho-ho cake, Texas sheet cake, breakfast casserole, and other things are certainly specialties that everybody enjoys. Steve is a morning person. He likes to get up every day and take a sunrise photograph and often shares that with Roberta, who posts it on the town's Facebook page. So we certainly appreciate all the other colorful aspects of what Steve brings to the town. I know David Morton, his boss, the chief building inspector, Kelly Wyatt, the deputy planning director, the whole department and the town certainly appreciate his service and thank you for your service over the last 5 years.
Mayor, the police chief will come up and present a certificate to Sergeant Chris Brady for his graduation from the West Point Leadership Program.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to come before you today to recognize Sergeant Chris Brady for graduating from the West Point Leadership Academy Leadership Program through Methodist University. Before I get started on that, I want to just tell you a little bit about Chris. He's originally from Beaufort County. He graduated from Northside High School, East Carolina University with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Graduated from Pitt County Community College with his basic law enforcement certificate. He was hired by Nags Head Police Department in 2006. He was promoted to sergeant in 2009, and in 2016 he was our Police Officer of the Year. I'd like to welcome his wife Missy and his children Porter and Katie. His other daughter Christine cannot be here, but this is a very special occasion. Sergeant Brady graduated from West Point Leadership Program on December the 13th. It was about a 12 to 13 week program, and it was done locally here in Southern Shores. What's challenging about these courses is that not only is he attending and got to do homework and projects for the program, but he's also working his regular shift. So working shift work and attending the program once every week, it can be challenging. A little bit about the program. The West Point Leadership Course is adopted from the military leadership course required of all cadets at the United States Military Academy in their third year of study. The course has been adopted for non-military organization. It's an academically rigorous course that relies heavily on case-based learning. The course examines and integrates leadership in organizations from 4 perspectives: the individual, the group, the leader, and the organization. The first one, the individual. Individuals are the basic building blocks of any organization. The students learn the police leadership framework and also learns the attributes and skills of effective leadership. The second area is the group. Group dynamics influence performance of the group, individuals in the group, and organizational performance. The students learn effective socialization of new group members and how to increase group cohesion. For leadership, police leaders lead in an environment in which danger shapes expectations and desires of the followers, and ethical dimensions of that relationship is emphasized. The last one is organization. Organizations are dynamic and complex. The student walks the terrain of the Revolutionary War battle that occurred at the Guilford Courthouse, North Carolina, and examines the battle from perspectives of Collins' work, Good to Great, and How the Mighty Fall. Very unique in this program that they actually made a trip to Guilford County Courthouse where they were able to walk, and this was just part of the end of the course where they had to do a program or a project. Examinations, they're case-based. At the end of each area of study, the student takes a case-based examination that it integrates the area with the previous area of study. Each examination lasts up to 4 hours and requires the student to apply what has been learned to solve a leadership dilemma as described in their case study. Again, we're really proud of Sergeant Brady. He's the first officer to complete this program with the Nags Head Police Department. They hope to hold it here again next year, and hopefully we can send other officers. Sergeant, congratulations.
Finally, Mr. Mayor, I've asked Roberta Thuman to come up and recognize the town for a couple of awards that we've received, largely due to her part, so she'll tell you why we earned these video awards.
I wish I could take all the credit, but there's a lot of help in here, that's for sure. Our sanitation cart etiquette video that we did last year in response to the number of carts that were being left on the Beach Road and South Old Oregon Inlet Road won an award. This video uses humor to tackle a serious problem, keeping our town beautiful and proper use and proper maintenance of your carts. It took first place in the Broadcast Public Service Announcement Programs category at the Government Information Officers Association Conference in November. Pretty proud of that. That's an award. It was awarded from among our peers, or my peers. We won the same award last year for our beach driving video, where two men speak as they're driving on the beach, and that video has nearly 20,000 views on YouTube. This one's up to about 3,000 on YouTube and 3,000 on Facebook. The North Carolina Association of Government Information Officers was formed in 1970 and is made up of information officers across North Carolina. I also like to, I'll make this short, I also like to thank Benny Baldwin, who we all know. We've worked with Benny. He's awesome, and he works with a gentleman named Chris McCardle, and they came up with this fantastic idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you, Roberta.
No comment, no claps. Thanks. I don't have time for entertainment.
What is that?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The next item on our agenda is public comment. Mr. Leidy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, the Board of Commissioners will entertain public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that you are asked to direct your comments to the full board rather than to any individual commissioner or to staff persons. Discussion between speakers and members of the audience is not permitted. The board ordinarily does not answer questions during public comment. And all of those who wish to present public comment, if you would please go to the podium and if you would start by introducing yourself and where you live and then address your remarks to the full board. Thank you.
I'm Louis Toth, and I live in the village. I want to show you a piece of artwork which I'm very proud of. Martin Luther King's Day is about 5 days from now, and you can see him on the right up above. The other civil rights leaders are shown there. And why I'm proud of it is because my daughter Jennifer is the principal artist of this work. And what's really unusual about it is where it's located. Can I see the next one? Oops, not that one. Oh, I gave it away. It's in New York City. I'll give you a clue. Jennifer teaches at Wagner College, which is in New York City. And this mural is also in New York City. And the person that she's standing with, the man, I believe is wearing a badge, right? Do you think you can guess where it is? It's in New York City. Go ahead.
New York City police officer?
He's higher than that. He's in charge.
Chief of the department.
This is a place where you cannot go visit. I cannot go and see it. None of you can go either to see it.
Rikers Island?
It has to do with law and order.
Rikers?
Okay. Rikers Island Prison. Can you imagine that? Let's put the mural back up there. That's my daughter. Kidding around. A friend of hers, they teach the inmates classes, and there was an art class, and a friend of hers was doing some art, and they came across this idea of celebrating the civil rights movement, and they needed a good painter. Jennifer basically took it on the work. And some of the inmates actually participated in helping, and so did some of her students. Went over from Wagner College and participated. Anyway, I'm very proud of it, and I'm really glad to share it with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, is there anyone else who wishes to address the board?
Good morning, Mayor, Councilmen, and guests. My name is Jackie Chen, and I am the chairman of the Community Housing Initiative at the Outer Banks Chamber of Commerce. The Outer Banks Chamber of Commerce is speaking in support of the application to convert the existing multi-use structure into dormitory, multifamily, and mixed development. The Outer Banks is facing a crisis in community housing availability for our year-round as well as seasonal workforce. This crisis is evident in the lack of qualified workers to fill vacant jobs in our region. New ideas and solutions are needed to allow for the creation of smaller, modestly priced housing units for our workforce.
Ms. Chun, I hate to interrupt you, but I want to point out that the matter you're speaking on is on the agenda for the board's consideration, and there will be an opportunity for comment during that as well.
Okay.
So if you want to reserve your comments to address the board when they're considering
Okay.
that particular conditional use permit, that may be more effective.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I promise I won't cut anyone else off if you talk about something else that's just a matter of public concern, but if anyone else wishes to address the board, this is your opportunity. Is there anybody else? If not, we will conclude public comment at this time, and the board will proceed with the rest of its agenda.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, we're going to take a very brief break for photographs for our awardees from this morning. Thank you. Now we're ready. So we are back to order, and our next order of business is or a couple of presentations.
Yes, sir. We'll start off with a presentation from Dare County Current TV Manager, Mr. Bobby Dobbs. Give us an update on the latest happenings at Current TV, and Dorothy is here as well. Dorothy's going to kick off.
Good morning,
Morning.
Mayor Cahoon and Commissioners. It's great to be here. I'm Dorothy Hester. I'm with Dare County Public Relations, and I am here with Bobby Dobbs, who's the channels manager for Current TV, which many of you remember as GovEd or the government channel years ago. We appreciate you letting us take just a few minutes to provide an update to your board and also to the citizens about local programming that's available not only on the cable channels, but also on the internet. Current TV has expanded beyond the cable channels, and we're now available online. So people anywhere with access online are able to see our programming, and that's really exciting. We've gotten a lot of great feedback, not only from out-of-town property owners, but we also have a lot of people who don't subscribe to cable anymore. So it opens up a lot of viewers for us. This past year, we began marketing the channel under the name Current TV, and it is a new name, but we've maintained the commitment to provide meaningful programming specifically for people here in your town and throughout the county. We have a governing committee. We meet regularly and talk about programming and talk about how we can better serve viewers. Commissioner Renee Cahoon is your representative. She participates. She has a keen eye for detail, which I'm sure y'all know, and we really appreciate what she brings forward on behalf of the town. Roberta is our staff liaison. She does a great job. I think she needs to take some more credit. That video, I know that there was help with the production of it, but it takes a strong person at the staff level to come up with the ideas and create a piece that is entertaining and that people want to watch. So good job, Roberta. Commissioner Fuller has a very long association with the channels. If I'm correct, when you were town manager 25 so years ago.
A few years ago.
A few. When this government access channel was first established, Nags Head was an original partner. The county was not. And so he had an effort in making that happen and having that vision many years ago. So I thought that was important to mention that. At this time, I'll introduce Bobby Dobbs, the channel's manager. He works with the governing group day in and day out. He'll provide an overview about our operations and tell you a little bit about what's ahead. So thank you again.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Thank you.
Okay, so there we go. Yeah. Thank you for this opportunity. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate the partnership that the town of Nags Head provides us as we try to inform Dare County about what's going on. And you'll notice in our new logo, our slogan, our sub-tag is No Dare. We want people to know their county, to know the towns and what's going on in the towns. And so everything that we do is driven towards that, as you'll see as I take you through some of the things that we're doing now. I'm going to go through a brief presentation here. Is that going to work? Good. There we go. What is Current TV? It's a collaboration to provide quality informational programming through two channels, Current TV Government and Current TV Education. And our member entities are, you see all the logos there, there's 10 of them. It's made up of all of the incorporated towns in Dare County, as well as Dare County, and 3 educational entities, the school system, Dare County Schools, College of the Albemarle, and also the UNC Coastal Studies Institute. And we're very pleased to have these 3 educational entities involved in what we're doing as well. There are 2 channels, as I said. Government TV Government is on Charter Spectrum Channel 191. Current TV Education is on Charter Spectrum Channel 198. Yes, you do have to have a box to receive that, but these days I think you pretty much have to have a box to receive anything on Charter Spectrum. They do operate 24/7, 365 days a year. But what we're most proud of is that each channel is streamed over the internet 24/7 and is accessible through our website, www.currenttv.org. Now, they have been streamed for years, but what we've been able to do with the infrastructure improvements that we've made over the past 3 years is that stream is much more dependable now than it was. It used to go down constantly, and you can now access it through a website that is easy to get to and easy to navigate, and I'll go through that in just a few minutes. We also, as part of that website, offer an extensive video on demand feature, and we also still maintain a YouTube channel. We've combined the 2 older YouTube channels into one through Current TV. Those 2 older channels are still there, and they still have archived video there from some of the older videos. But we're trying to move people away from those and migrate them to the new channel. And we're doing pretty good. We're up to about 10,000 views of videos on the new channel. We also have launched a Facebook channel that we launched back in January. That's going very well too. And that is a way for us to communicate with people in the county about new things that are appearing on the channel when a new program is starting, or if something really new is going on. We also will share information that you guys put on your Facebook page, information from the school systems, that kind of thing. So truly a collaboration. Some interesting information about how we are funded. I kind of thought I'd go into this a little bit just because a lot of people just don't know or understand it. But it's really very simple. And I have to really say that I appreciate the thought that went into putting this collaboration together years ago when you decided to do it the way you did, because it's made an extremely strong collaboration, one of the best in the state, in my opinion, as far as PEG channels go. PEG stands for Public Education Government Access. We here in Dare County only operate a government and an access channel. We do not do public. That's a whole nother set of headaches that you have to deal with. And the way it's funded is that each of the participating members, each of those 10 entities, provides $1,000 annually towards the support of our operation. That gives them access to provide content to the channels and representation on the Government and Education Access Channels Committee. And that comes out of your budget here in the town of Nags Head. In addition to that, each participating member has access to a fully equipped studio, which is in the Dare County Administration Building in Manio, and our office is there, and access to some field equipment that we can loan out to the towns if they need it, and more importantly, local program development initiative grants, which was used to produce the piece that won the award for the town of Nags Head and Roberta. This is a way that the operation can give back to the entities by providing funding for you to produce programming for the channel or to produce infrastructure or equipment to help produce programming for the channels. The TV equipment in this room was also provided by LPDI support. And also you get support from our staff. Myself, as well as producer Skip Wallace, are available to help our entities in any way we can. We provide consultation, advice, we come help sometimes. We do a lot to try to support our entities in a lot of different ways. This is where it gets interesting. Each government entity receives a quarterly distribution from the state of North Carolina, Video Programming Distribution Unit of the North Carolina Department of Revenue. If you go to the North Carolina Department of Revenue site, you can navigate through that site and find this information. This distribution is based on a county's or city's proportional share of the certified amount of revenue from cable franchise fees and PEG channel subscriber fees for the first 6 months of the fiscal year compared to the state total for those revenues. That sounds complicated, but essentially what happens is every person in the state of North Carolina that subscribes to cable, subscribes to a satellite service, pays part of their bill, goes to a tax that goes to the state of North Carolina and goes into a big pot in Raleigh, and then that money is distributed back out to the certifying PEG channels that are across the state. Dare County has 2, and we have 7 entities that qualify as programmers of those channels. The reasons it's 7 and not 10 is because the education channels or the education entities have to be under the umbrella of a municipality or a government entity. They can't be considered a programmer on their own because the education channels are usually run by government entities. So that money comes into the towns and it gets sent back to Dare County, where it gets distributed out through our operation every quarter. And that's how we're funded. That's what pays my salary, Skip's salary, and the LPDI grants, and the operational cost and expenses that we have to keep the channel running. Current TV maintains an office in the administration building of Dare County and the public relations office over in Manio. That's also where our studio is located, and we have a couple of edit suites there, and that's where my office and Skip's office is located. We also are very proud of our new website. We launched this in August, produced by OBX Media here locally. And we told them we wanted a video-driven website because we are a video entity. We want to interact with people through video. So I'm going to take you briefly through this website. You can check it out later. I would encourage you to do that. On our front page, you can see we feature a video every month or a couple of weeks or so. Right now, we're featuring this Dogwood Stormwater Project video that the town of Southern Shores did. Very interesting piece on what they've done to help improve the stormwater runoff at the Dogwood intersection and Highway 12. There's also this video on demand section. I'll give you a little more look at that in just a minute. And we also have these these boxes where you can see our government channel stream or our education channel stream. And you can just watch it by clicking on that. I'll show you that in just a minute. You can also get to our schedules through our front page here that show you what's on when on each channel. And a little blurb about who we are and what we do. And then all the entities are down here, and as you can see, they're hot links to the websites of your town's websites. Look at there's usually 3 little thumbnails here. These are the latest things we put up on the channel, and then a place to get to our Facebook page. I'm going to go back up here and click on Video on Demand. And go down. As you can see, it's broken out into categories. I'm going to go down here to the town of Nags Head. Let's see, right there we are. And if you click over here on this little blue banner, it comes up with all the videos that are currently up there from the town of Nags Head. As you can see, it's a pretty sizable number. Here's the trash carts video. Infamous trash carts video. Famous trash. And the beach driving video is here, which is also very, very well done. And just some other videos about various aspects of the town of Nags Head. So if you were thinking about coming to Nags Head or moving to Nags Head, you could go to this website, you could check out, and a lot of these are on your website as well, or your YouTube channel. You could pretty well easily navigate around some videos and find out some key information about Nags Head so that you would have a better idea of what the place is like. We also do these little sidebars over here that give you information about what's coming up, programming information that might be coming up next or soon or whatever. We also have this Watch the Government channel, and this worked right before the meeting. We'll see if it works now.
And other species in the water.
That is our live
If you're
stream.
experiencing any discomfort after you leave the water, come to a lifeguard. We will either be able to explain it or...
And you can also go and watch our education channel stream as well. These are our program schedules. It's basically a Google Calendar that just, when I update it at the office, it's updated on the website. It's that quick. And so you can go on here and you can find things that you're interested in, like the Dare County Board of Commissioners meeting is on this afternoon and tonight down here. And if some of these, if you click on them, they have little blurbs of information about what that program is about. If the title's self-explanatory, I usually don't put a lot of detail there, but if it's something that might perk your interest and I want to give you some more information about it, we can put that information in there as well. And when you just click on it, it will show you what that information is. And then also there is a way to contact us. My information is there, Skip's information is there, our address is there. You can also contact Dorothy. I think everybody knows how to contact Dorothy. So, so that's our website. And I want to finish with a brief video. Let's see, no, it's the next, yeah, there we go. Yeah, the next page. Here we go. Yeah, good. short little video about some things that are on our channel. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that anybody has.
Just one thing to point out, for the $1,000, one of the things that we do have access to is each town is eligible for $10,000 each year in grant money for videos. That's later on our agenda today. And then also the equipment as we need it to put in the rooms to enhance lighting and everything that all the upgrades we've made to our rooms.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next.
Next, we'll have our audit, the 1617 report from Ms. Kotang Jim Moses.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for allowing our firm to be your auditor. I wanted to go over June 30, 2017 audited financial statements. To date, the Local Government Commission has approved the town's report with no comments. We couldn't have done that without the help of Amy and her staff, so we appreciate it and we thank her and her staff for helping us with that. So the audit highlights our firm issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements of the town. During the year, the Stormwater Fund and the Old Beach Nourishment Fund closed into other funds. Also, during the year, the law enforcement officer separation allowance, you will see a larger liability on your books. That fund, when it was a fiduciary fund in 2016, it closed into the general fund for reporting purposes based on GASB standards. And this year, after that occurred, the standard says that we must now put your full liability on the books. So just a quick glance at what happened with it is the liability went from $16,000 to $772,000 this year. And the difference is due to the method of calculating the liability by your actuarial firm. This is because of the new standard. The full liability is now on the books. So in the past, it was only liability from the first year of implementation going forward, plus an amortized amount each year for trying to capture the past liabilities. So going forward, the liability is what it is, plus changes for future present value and any changes in your plan members. This is going to be taking place next year for your other post-employment benefits. So I've got a slide at the end that we'll discuss that a little bit more. So the general fund ended with total revenues decreasing by $1.9 million. Expenditures decreased by $1.3 million, or 7.5%. We'll also discuss these decreases in a bit here. total fund balance for the general fund ended at $14,157,000. This is a decrease from the prior year by $885,000, or about 6%. So what happened during the year was the town transferred $2.7 million to the new Beach Nourishment Fund to create that fund. The town also had less revenues in the current year as compared to the prior year. And we will also discuss revenues coming up in upcoming slides. The general fund's available fund balance at the end of the year was $11,625,741. That is a decrease in available fund balance from the prior year of about $51,000, so it's less than 1%. And your available fund balance as a percentage of the general fund expenditures is 63.52%. So the local government commission recommends that an entity has 8% to account for 1 month's worth of expenditures. So the town appears to have about 8 months of fund balance available. The local government commission uses this percentage to compare you with other units your size. Your size is or the peer group is determined by population size. Your largest revenue source is ad valorem taxes. We see a decrease from the prior year of about $1 million, or 13%. This is due to the town had a 3-cent tax increase for 2017, but the municipal service tax district did not levy any taxes. So the town will see an overall decrease. Just to kind of give you an idea of the municipal service district taxes, in 2016, you had $1.8 million in collections and credits. So that's about $1.8 million that you don't see in 2017. Other taxes and licenses. This category includes your sales and use taxes, occupancy taxes, privilege licenses, etc. This is your second largest revenue source. We see a decrease from the prior year of about $67,000. And this is because occupancy tax revenues is down from the prior year of about $60,000. Restricted intergovernmental, this category includes your federal, state, and local grants. This is the third largest revenue source for the town. We see a decrease from the prior year of about 28%. And this is because in the prior year, in that $2.4 million, there was a large contribution from Dare County, and so you didn't have this contribution from the county in the current year. So your largest expenditure use for the town is in public safety. We saw an increase from the prior year of about $141,000. This does not include debt service expenditure. For Public Works, we see an increase from the prior year of about $1.5 million. So this increase here, this is where your new Dowdy Park project in Public Facilities Maintenance Department is booked. And so the project itself had expenditures of $1.6 million during 2017. So therefore, you see that large decrease in Public Works function. And then in your general government function, this is the third largest expenditure use by the town. We see an increase from the prior year of about 15.7%. This is also where you're, compared to prior year, you didn't have the large peak resource grant, and this is the function of government that the peak resource grant pass-through disbursement took place. And then for debt service, we see a large decrease from the prior year of about 77%. In the prior year, the town paid off bonded debt, which was about $3.6 million, and then that debt went away for 2017. This is your new Beach Nourishment Fund. We had total revenues of $9,400, total expenditures of $385,000, and then the ending fund balance in this fund was about $2.3 million. And in your water fund, the change in net position decreased from the prior year. The town had less revenues and more expenditures as compared to the prior year. The debt service includes principal and interest here, this 141,000. It is a decrease from the prior year. Cash flow from operations decreased from the prior year due to increase in cash paid for goods and services and paid to or on behalf of employees for services. And then there was a decrease in your overall unrestricted net position of about 8% from the prior year. So the unrestricted net position ended up at 3.3 million for the water fund. Okay, so going into fiscal year 2018, what you're going to see in your audit report next year, your other post-employment benefit is where you pay for a retiree's health insurance after they retire, or some entities give them a stipend instead of allowing them to be on the health insurance plan. So during 2018, what the town's going to do is they're going to recognize a full liability related to this benefit. So when you first implemented OPEB on your financials, previous guidance allowed governments to amortize the liability over a period of up to 30 years. So what the town was doing was putting on a little bit at a time. So what the new standard is doing next year is it's making you put the whole liability on the books. So going forward, all governments will be required to use the same method of calculation to calculate the liability. Under current standards, governments used to allow you to choose one of 6 different methods. And so next year, everybody's going to be on the same cost method for determining this liability, and that is determined by the actuarial firm that does the study. So we have heard that this number is going to be a large number and can significantly impact your net position on your full accrual statements, even making some entities have a deficit net position. We do not know what the liability will be at this point. Guidance will change how the long-term liability associated with OPEB are calculated by the specialist that you use. So what we want to do is we want to let finance know to get your information into Kavanaugh as soon as possible, because every entity next year is going to be doing an actuarial study. So everybody's going to be fighting to try to get theirs back on time to avoid delay of issuing 2018's report. And the sooner you can get it, the sooner you can talk to Kavanaugh about how big that liability is and their method of calculating that as well. And so with LEO, the law enforcement officer's separation allowance, we had new footnotes this year with RSI schedules in your audit report that you didn't see in prior year. For 2018, OPEB will have those same exact RSI schedule and footnote disclosures. And that is the only thing I can think of that's coming up for 2018's audit. Questions? I know there's some out there.
Can I just ask one point of clarification? The board, I'm sure will have other questions, but you said that the occupancy tax revenue was down $60,000 from the year before. Is that's not reflective of occupancy tax countywide, that's reflective of the town share of occupancy tax, is that right?
Yeah, that's just our revenue that the town is seeing.
Yeah,
The main part of that was because of our losses.
It was a little alarming to say that occupancy tax was down when we know that occupancy tax is actually
And
countywide.
that was due to the fact that we lost a portion of our shared revenue from the other towns implementing their MSD. So countywide, it could have been up, but the revenue portion we recognized was down just because of our loss in the shared revenue portion.
That, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, other questions?
With the OPEB in 18, for communities or towns or counties that are showing a deficit in their, a net deficit, you know, what is the plan for that? Because it's somewhat of an arbitrary number based on actuarial tables many years out, assuming life
Right.
expectancies and those kind of things, and people working for 30 years before they retire, so.
Right. The local government commission knows, and they do expect a lot of the smaller entities to go in the deficit, but you're going to see the deficit mainly on, possibly on the enterprise fund full accrual statements, and then your exhibit 1 and 2. I don't know if, they haven't really given us guidance on what to do or how it's going to impact, but I had a discussion with Paula before I come, and she had said that for one of her small towns that had bonded debt or had debt, they were going to contact their bond counsel and explain to them this OPEB liability that's going to come up in 2018, and they're going to request that the bond counsel not include the liability in determining the rating. So you guys don't have any bonded debt?
Yeah.
Because what you had, you paid off last year.
Right, we're looking forward to having special application bonds again in the second phase of the beach management.
Okay. It's going to be new. It's going to be new for everybody. And so I'm sure that as they start appearing on the financial statements, and now for the bond counsel themselves, they are aware of what's going on with OPEB. I don't know how else, what other places, I'm sure there's a lot of places, but I'm not sure what else it's going to affect in terms of maybe financing with banks or anything like that, outside of having to go through a bond counsel or the local government commission. But I don't think, we haven't had guidance from them, from the local government commission, as far as what this means, if it's going to be a deficit. They do expect a lot of entities to be in the deficit, but they haven't told us what the effects will be. If I do find out, or when we start seeing these, if I hear of stuff, I sure will let Amy know. Yeah, it's just so new. I don't think anybody's, it's not they haven't thought about it. I'm sure somebody has thought about it. I think we just don't know exactly what the consequences could be at this point. But you're right. The liability number is going to be calculated as I would even say as an estimate, because it's a possibility that all your retirees will not retire from the town. So I wouldn't jump out to go and fund that full liability immediately.
Mayor?
I just have one follow-up. Is it a recommendation to partially fund or minimally fund?
Our firm doesn't have a decision either way, because that's more of a management decision, something that you have to take a lot of stuff into consideration before you decide to fund it. What I do tell other people, what I do tell most of my entities is that if you know that your employees are not gonna, obviously everybody that is calculated under that liability will not retire from the town. The chances are pretty slim for all of them to retire, but if you do want to partially fund it, you can. The guidance, the GASB standard, is very clear on how, and I'll double check this with Paula, because I was just telling Amy, I think they're pretty clear on what they consider funded, the definition of funding the OPEB. And so what I can remember a couple years ago when they started talking about this is the only way that you can say that you fund your liability is if you put it in an irrevocable trust. And I'll double check that with Paula and let Amy know for sure. So the effects of that is you could put money aside, but if you don't put it in an irrevocable trust, you can't say in the footnotes of the audit report that you fund your liability.
Even if you fund through the state, through their, is that considered the irrevocable trust?
The state does have an irrevocable trust that you can set up. I was also just telling Amy that all the entities that we audit in North Carolina, I only know of 2 that have that trust with the state. So we have over 100 audits, and that means 98% are not funding it through that trust. And even going into the local government commissions conferences, you will hear them talk about, not everybody in North Carolina funds it. It's actually, a majority of North Carolina does not fund it. Now, changes going forward, the councils, commissioners, the boards may think of something and decide to fund that, partially, probably exactly what you guys are thinking at this time, for reasons such as trying to bond, get debt coming up, and other things.
Thank you.
Quick question. From an accounting standpoint, if an employee works for one town for 29 years and then moves and works for another town for 1 year and then retires, who's responsible for reporting the unfunded mandate part?
That part could probably be answered by the Orbit, the retirement people. I'm not really sure, do you know?
Retire, if they would, for other post-employment benefits, it depends on how our policy is structured. If you came and worked here for 1 year, you wouldn't qualify for post-employment benefits. So the OPEB part, you wouldn't qualify for under our current policy.
Our policy's what, 5 years?
I'm not sure I'm not sure how long you have to be here, Doug, do you know? To qualify for post-employment benefits.
10 years.
What's the minimum you can work?
It's in your audit.
It's in the notes.
Commissioner
5-year
Sears has it.
minimum, so
Okay.
they wouldn't qualify for,
That's
to
true.
appear on. So really, you know, a lot of this liability is set by our policy.
Right.
And
So if somebody worked at another unit of government for 25 years, then came and worked for us for 6 years, that liability would move from that first agency to us.
Then they would qualify under post-employment benefits under our current policy.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Cahoon.
Given that this is a different requirement that's coming forward, so it's going to change our balance sheets to some extent, as you said, some places might be negative. Does it also have the potential to make any money that we borrow carry higher interest rates?
We don't know that impact at this point. You know, what I had said about Paula, what she had recommended to her other town was, you are more than welcome to always contact the bank and ask them if, explain the OPEB liability to them, and it may be that they decide to exclude that from the calculation or consideration, take that into consideration. We don't have a lot of guidance from the local government commission with that at this time.
This may be a discussion at a later date, but I'll introduce it now. The board in the past has given the guidance to the staff that once, the policy for fund balance for the town has been at least 50%. And there are 3 priorities that you set based on your values at the time, that when we realize funds above that 50% in fund balance, that you would consider funding, and this is not in order, but you consider funding OPEB. You would consider repayment of the water fund, a repayment of the water fund from the general fund for the property that was purchased at the Soundside event site. And then the third was a policy you had years back that you re-energized, was to fund art. The town's had I'm really proud about its artwork. So those 3 things, I think now we're, in this upcoming budget year, you're going to be in a position to consider funding OPEB with the excess fund balance.
Yeah, and you may, and I don't want to advise against partially funding it or not, but I will definitely find out about the word funding in your footnotes for next year, if we can use that, and let Amy know. I'll have to find out from Paula, because what I remember a while back was you could not use that funding word if, you would still have to say you pay as you go if you don't fully fund it through a trust account.
One of the points I think that came out in Commissioner Cahoon's comment is that the audit, if you're looking at the audit without the inner knowledge of the workings of the audit, you want your books to look as neat and clean as they possibly can. Not funding this is kind of makes the books look worse than they are, and that's difficult to elaborate to people. And Amy's already gotten us on the certified financial reports, and she's working now on a public audit that would be more publicly put together so that it could kind of tell the story of where we are, that may illustrate the things like how shared occupancy tax affects your books, and how not funding this affects your books. So I think, not putting words in your mouth, I didn't mean to, but in one management philosophy, maybe you're kind of owe it to the public to put the best, put the town in the best position possible, and funding this might represent that.
Any other questions?
Can I just add one more thing? I want to make sure that everybody knows that there's a difference between the OPEB and the retirement. So you'll see 3 different liabilities on Exhibit 1. One is the LEO that she discussed, and that's the law enforcement portion that we're liable for. One is the OPEB, which is the responsibility for paying their portion of health care. And then the other one is the Elders portion that the state provides us, which is our proportionate share of the retirement system from the state. So the portion that we pay for, our responsibility for the state retirement system and our responsibility for the portion of the health care benefits are 2 separate liabilities that show up on the books. So there's 3 sort of different liabilities that we're talking about that appear on Exhibit 1, if that makes sense.
Okay.
They previously weren't on there.
Right, and the Elders one was previously not on there as well, so that's a fairly new one, and that's a pretty large liability as well, so.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions, comments? Okay, great. Thank you very much.
I, too, just want to extend my thanks to Amy, and she just breathed a sigh of relief that you didn't see that a lot of hard work goes into this by our staff, by her and her staff, so thank you.
I know it does. It's incredibly time-consuming on their part, and the quality of our financial operation is pretty outstanding. So. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which includes 8 items, and a motion on the consent agenda would be in order.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. The next the next 3 items on our agenda under G are public hearings. Mr. Leidy, again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. At this time, we will begin the public hearing to consider a conditional use application submitted by James Rose to convert existing multi-use structure into a dormitory multifamily mixed development. This property is zoned C2 in the general commercial district and is located at 4301 South Croatan Highway. I'll point out for the board that on this particular matter, the board sits as a quasi-judicial body, and when the board sits as a quasi-judicial body, the board's decision must be based on various requirements. First, the board's decision must be based on competent material and substantial evidence in view of the record as a whole. Those people presenting evidence must be sworn or affirmed by the town clerk. The board's decision must be based only on evidence that is presented during the hearing. And in addition, the board must consider various conflict issues because it's imperative that no member participate in or vote on any quasi-judicial matter in a manner that would that would violate the affected person's constitutional rights to an impartial decision maker. Impermissible violations of due process include, but are not limited to, a commissioner having a fixed opinion prior to the hearing that is not susceptible to change, undisclosed ex parte communications, or having a close familial, business, or other associational relationship with an affected person or a financial interest in the outcome of the matter. Previously undisclosed ex parte communications which have not caused you to develop a fixed opinion may be cured through disclosure of the facts or information obtained on the record. A party or a member of council, including the council member at issue, may object to any other member's participation for lack of impartiality. If an objection is raised to a member's participation and that member does not choose to recuse himself or herself, the remaining members shall by majority vote rule on the objection. So at this time, I ask whether any of you have any conflicts which would keep you or potentially keep you from being an impartial decision maker, or have you had any undisclosed communications or information which you would like to disclose at this time?
Because our firm prepared some of the documents for this project, there is the risk that I may have ex parte information, and I believe that I should be excused from this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The board should then take action based on his request to excuse him from consideration of this matter.
Motion to recuse the mayor from this discussion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, Mr. Mayor, you'll be excused from this
Thank you very
matter.
much.
Yes, Ms. Cahoon?
I will disclose that in the past, I have done business with Mr. Rose, but have no current business dealings that affect this matter in any way.
So you don't have any financial interest in the outcome of this matter?
I do not.
All right, thank you, Ms. Cahoon. And Mr. Fuller?
Does conversation with staff rise to the level of bringing that up as an issue?
Yes, if you've received information regarding the potential this application, then you need to disclose that information at this time.
I've had conversations with staff about specific things that I planned on bringing up as points during the discussion.
Okay. Will you be able to make your decision on this application based solely on the evidence that's actually presented during the hearing?
I will.
Okay. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything to disclose? All right. In addition, as we begin this matter, I want to point out that there are certain procedures that apply for this hearing. First, the applicant has the right to question any witness and to offer rebuttal evidence. Board members may question anybody who's presenting evidence at any time, but I will point out that if the board has any questions for any witnesses, those questions need to be asked during the actual presentation of evidence and before we begin our deliberations. So, at this time, we will start by having those individuals who will present evidence on this application to please approach the town clerk and receive the oath. That would also include you, Ms. Chen. If you're interested in presenting any evidence in connection with this, if you would please also be sworn.
You need more than one Bible, Cliff.
Right. Might have to have more. All right, thank you very much. And at this time, we'll begin the presentation of evidence with the presentation of the staff's analysis presented by Kelly Wyatt.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. As noted, this is a request being made by James Rose. It's a conditional use application for the conversion of an existing multi-use structure into a dormitory multifamily mixed-use development. The property is located at 4301 South Croatan Highway, and the board and the audience might be most familiar with this property as it was the former CDC building. I thought for the purposes of discussion, I would bring up the site drawings, and I've pulled up the first floor plan just to begin with. So there's essentially two uses occurring on this site. When it was originally constructed, this front portion was dedicated to office use, and this rear portion was dedicated to multifamily units. There are 6 multifamily units back here. What's being presented today is simply related to this front portion. Does not include this rear portion. So what is being requested is to convert what was this office space into a dormitory. And in 2017, through the months of July, August, and September, planning staff worked with the applicant, James Rose, and his architect, Mark Caston, closely with the planning board to develop an ordinance which set forth this new use category and the conditions correlated with that. So in doing so, that ordinance was adopted in October 2017, and now the applicant has brought forth the conditional use site plan in conjunction with those regulations, which is what you have today. So in looking at this in terms of lot coverage, the entirety of this proposal is within the existing footprint. It is interior work. There's no expansion to the footprint or to lot coverage. So lot coverage remains the same. It was originally constructed at 47.9%. They're allowed 55%. So lot coverage remains compliant. The site plan indicates a small expansion of a parking lot in the northeast corner. That is coverage over coverage, so it doesn't represent an increase in the total. Building height is unchanged. Architectural design, when this was originally approved in 2009, they did have to meet architectural design standards. Those standards have since been increased, but it was architecturally compliant at the time it was approved, and nothing about this application would trigger additional architectural compliance. We did create a parking standard for dormitory, which was 1 parking space per bedroom. There are 9 bedrooms, so that requires 9 parking spaces. And then when you take into account the parking required for that secondary use, the 6 multifamily units on the east, that requires 12 parking spaces. They need 21 spaces in totality, and they have 29. So parking is compliant. Again, in 2009, there was a requirement for a buffer yard C along the property line where there was a budding parking lot and parking areas. Over time, that buffer has weakened, and so as part of this request, we're asking that they go ahead and reestablish the buffering as it was originally approved, and that is shown on their site plan for them to do that. Lighting is unchanged. There's no proposal for any new lighting, but we'll monitor that, and if there is new lighting, we'll do an audit. There's no signage proposed at this time. Should there be additional signage, that will be reviewed and approved prior to any zoning or building permits. The applicant is awaiting approval from the Dare County Health Department regarding the septic system. The representative for the applicant who's here today, Mark Caston, can speak to this probably better than I can, but it was determined that the system would need to be upgraded. They have reached out to engineer Mike Robinson. Mike Robinson is in the process of working with Jack Flythe to design a plan that would accommodate that increase in the septic capacity, but it has not been approved to date. I would just mention that prior to, should this application be approved, prior to any issuance of zoning or building permits, we would have to have that approval in place to do that. Stormwater management, we had the town engineer, David Ryan, review this, and he provided an attachment, a markup of the stormwater plan from 2009, where you can see, if you were to look on site today, you can see where some of the swells have had some erosion and sedimentation, and the swells aren't functioning properly. As part of this, we're asking that those swells be reestablished as they were originally approved. There's no change to traffic circulation. Of course, it will have to meet North Carolina Fire Prevention Code. The existing dumpster on site does not accommodate very well a front-load dumpster, but there's nothing about this application that would require relocating the dumpster, so Public Works has approved it as it's been proposed. So as I said, after working with the applicant and with the planning board, we did create this ordinance, and the main part of this ordinance set forth the number of occupants that could be in a dormitory, and the number of occupants was correlated to the number of sleeping rooms and the area dedicated in those sleeping rooms. The ordinance is included in your packet, but just very quickly, essentially it said per sleeping room, you had to have 70 square feet of floor area to accommodate the first occupant, and then any occupant after that was required to have 50 square feet. That has been broken down in your staff report. It was also broken down on the floor plan. Actually, it's really small, but it's actually right here too. It is compliant with the code, and it does result in 9 bedrooms and 14 occupants. In addition to the sleeping rooms, the ordinance also required a minimum floor area for common space per occupant. That breakdown is in your staff report as well, but they are in excess on both the first floor and the second floor for required common space. They have provided the restroom facilities in compliance with the ordinance as well. So based upon the review of this application in conjunction with the text amendment and regulations that was approved in October of 2017, staff finds that as this has been presented, it does comply, and the planning board and planning staff both recommend approval of the conditional use application with the condition that the swales be restored to their original configuration per the town engineer's request. Happy to answer questions.
All right, are there any questions for Kelly?
That recommendation did not include anything relating to septic health, correct?
It did not simply because that would be a requirement of building permit issuance regardless.
So staff is not recommending any language that relates to the proposed development meet a standard?
We would require that an approved Dare County Health Department septic permit be provided prior to issuance of any zoning or building.
But that was not part of your recommendation,
It's not part of the recommendation simply because it is part of a complete application for submittal. We would require that.
So you're telling us we don't have a complete application?
I'm telling you that a complete application for processing of the building inspector and zoning administrator prior to issuance of a building permit and a zoning permit would require approval from the health department.
Then I can only assume your answer is you don't have a complete application from what you just said.
We have a complete application for the conditional use submittal. This is not a submittal for the building permit. So it's my understanding the conditional use permit application is complete. It's a requirement that there be health department approval prior to issuance of a building permit, but if this board felt more comfortable in stating that condition at this point, that would certainly be acceptable.
But us to make a finding of fact, we would have to know that information, correct? We'd have to know whether it meets it or not, for us to make that as a finding of fact.
I would leave that up to this board to determine. I think you have a letter from the health department that states they are aware of the current capacity, what the capacity must be, and the process to obtain that. Again, the engineer's working on the design. We just don't have the letter at this point.
But are you saying that we know it will be met, or are you saying that somebody's working on it?
I'm saying that someone is working on it. Once it is met, we will receive that letter, that authorization. If that authorization is never provided, regardless of whether the Board of Commissioners approves this conditional use permit, if we don't have that authorization, we are unable to issue a building permit, so the project does not move forward.
I'll just save the rest of my comments for the process as we go through.
All right.
Okay.
Any other questions for Kelly from anybody else at this time? Does the applicant have any questions for Ms. Wyatt? All right. All right, thank you. Any other presentation from staff at this time?
No, sir.
All right, thank you very much. All right, at this time, the applicant may present evidence in connection with or in support of this application.
Hello, my name is Mark Caston with Cahoon and Caston Architects. I think Kelly did a great job of presenting this. The one question is about the septic system. Mike Robinson, the engineer on the project, has talked with Jack Flythe of the Health Department and has an agreement a loose agreement that installing a 1,500-gallon septic tank in line before the septic system would solve the issue. The system that's there will handle the additional capacity. We just need to add this 1,500-gallon tank. So he's done all that. He just hasn't gotten an official approval from Jack Flythe at the Health Department. And I would like to emphasize Kelly's point that there's no way the project could continue without a Health Department approval. You know, whether you approve this or not at this time, he has to have an approved system before he can get a building permit and proceed with the project. So that's all I have to say.
All right, does the board have any questions for Mr. Caston? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
When is it anticipated that that will be received?
Mike, I talked to Mike this morning, and he said he's got to do some work with making sure that the elevations and everything will work to place the tank in line with the system. And I think at that point, he'll be able to get something to the Health Department to get an official approval.
Do we have an estimate of when that work will be complete and when that?
I don't, but again, nothing can happen on the project until they get the Health Department approval.
All right. Mr. Sears?
Mr. Caston, in reference to the existing building being office space versus living space in the back, was there any consideration to check to see if the windows were egress in the potential areas of living space for safety reasons? Would they meet that code?
This building is sprinklered, and by code is not required to have the egress windows in there, but it is completely compliant in terms of its egress. I guess that's what you're talking about, size of windows and things like that? Okay.
Right. I mean, we have to assume that even though that it's regulated for a certain amount of people, that at any given time, there could be more people in the building than is designed for, and you want to have as many egress possibilities as possible.
Yes, it meets all egress requirements per code.
Any other questions for Mr. Caston? Anything further, Mr. Caston?
No, sir.
All right, any other evidence on behalf of the applicant at this time?
I have none.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else who has been sworn and who wishes to present evidence in connection with this application may do so at this time.
This is a statement from the chamber, so to bore you, I'm just going to repeat what I started earlier. My name again is Jackie Chun, and I chair the Community Housing Initiative at the Outer Banks Chamber. The Outer Banks Chamber of Commerce is speaking in support of this application and converting the existing multi-use structure into dormitory, multifamily, mixed development. The Outer Banks is facing a crisis in community housing availability for both year-round as well as seasonal workers. The crisis is evident in the lack of qualified workers to fill vacant jobs in our region. New ideas and solutions are needed to allow for the creation of smaller, modestly priced housing units for our workforce while preserving the character of the surrounding community. Several benefits of this proposal include the following. It promotes workforce housing at a small scale, provides workforce housing at no expense to the public, establishes conveniently located rental housing for the local workforce, and provides additional income for property owners. The proposal is one small step that may help in alleviating some of that shortfall. The Chamber is working side by side with a number of organizations, business owners, business members, and concerned citizens on this issue, and will be reaching out in the near future to engage in a conversation with our town and counties. Thank you.
If you'll wait one moment, Ms. Chun, does the board have any questions for Ms. Chun? All right, thank you. What about the applicant, Mr. Rose, Mr. Caston, any questions? All right, thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am. Would anyone else care to provide evidence in connection with this application? Mr. Cornwell, anything from you, sir?
Nothing additional, no, sir.
All right, does the applicant wish to present any, oh, I'm sorry, yes, ma'am. And just to confirm, ma'am, you did receive the oath at the beginning of the hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Margaret Caffey. We own the property immediately adjacent on the south side to the subject property. We do object to the approval of the conditional use permit. At one time, we had a rental property that was across from a dormitory use property, and it was not a pleasant experience, and it's really one we would prefer not to repeat. That's all I have to say.
Does the board have any questions for Ms. Caffey? Yes, ma'am.
Just to clarify, Ms. Caffey, are you OBX Holdings LLC?
No, ma'am.
Because it's not listed as an adjacent owner, that's why I asked.
No, ma'am. It's in our name. 4303 is the address, immediately south of the building that we're discussing.
OBX Holdings to the east.
Okay. I was just trying to figure out which one it was. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Caffey? Mr. Caston, any questions for her? All right, thank you.
I wasn't here for can I take the oath now?
You may, yes, you may. You may receive the oath if you wish to present comment and evidence. If you'll please approach the clerk.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. As my wife said, we live next door to this particular building. So we've watched it from its beginning to its point now, and it's been constantly deteriorating. But my main concern was when I received this notice and it said that it was going to be converted to dormitory. That means people in and out, unvetted, and there is no mention of any security that's going to be there to look after these transits. I'll call them transits. I don't know what they're going to be. It could be workers. It could be anybody that I guess has to pay a fee to live in the dormitory. The dormitory is what really concerns us. The apartments and things like that, they've come and gone. They've been people there. They've been families. But mostly they've been, it appears to be empty. There's not a whole lot of activity that's going on there. Originally, it was set up so that there would be businesses using part of the building, and in the back part, it would be residential. That's my understanding. That could or could not be correct, but that's the way it appeared. So, like I said, my main concern is the problem of making certain that there is security and that someone is overseeing the dormitories. A dormitory, you know, it could be a room that houses one person or 25. They have these big hostels in Europe. They put tons of people in. So I wish that you would consider that aspect when you make your deliberation. Thank you for letting me speak.
Mr. Cathy, I didn't get your first name, sir.
Henry.
And Henry Cathy?
Yes.
All right, does the board have any questions for Mr. Cathy?
And your physical address?
4303.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Caston, any questions for Mr. Cathy? All right, thank you very much, sir. All right, any other evidence from anyone else? Mr. Caston, is there any further rebuttal evidence you wish to present at this time?
Again, yeah, I'd just like to point out that those comments of the property, we've already gone through the process of permitting this use in that site and that zoning, and also have vetted the dormitory language such that it'll keep the number of people to a certain level and include living space, and to make it a functional building, not to be just overwhelmed with as many people as you could pack into the facility. So I think we've addressed some of the concerns of and we've also even talked about oversight with that, with the people who are in there as well. So I think we've addressed a lot of those concerns that the other comments, with the other comments. That's all I have to say.
Any questions for Mr. Caston from the board? All right, any further evidence from you, sir?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. Does the board wish to receive any other evidence before it begins its deliberations on this application?
Does that mean we ask staff our questions now?
Yes, sir.
Or can we ask staff questions once we get in?
As far as evidentiary matters go, you need to get that on this part of the hearing. Yes, sir.
Then I have a number of questions I'd like to ask staff.
Okay. Yes,
if
sir.
I may.
You want to start with Ms. Wyatt?
I don't care.
Okay. Ladies first.
Okay. Probably some of these will be fairly easy, but can you tell me, well, first of all, I'll take a personal moment and say I don't like the definition of the dormitory. Be that as it may, that's what we live with. My question is, there's two uses on the piece of property. One is multifamily and one is dormitory. Can you cite where in the ordinance that is allowed?
Probably going to hit the wrong button here. Okay, so what's on the screen now is the ordinance that was adopted October 2017. And so here, again, here's the definition that you had mentioned earlier. This first section here just lists dormitory as a standalone use. But as you go down, the ordinance also included Section 35, which allowed multiple uses in one structure, such as dormitory, multifamily, and mixed development. So it was this Section 35 that took dormitory from a singular use to a use that could be in conjunction with others.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
The next question I have is, when I read in the definition, the way I read it, it requires one bathroom per bedroom. Now, am I reading it incorrectly? And if so, how do you read it?
So just dormitory means a commercial facility used for monthly rental housing of unrelated residents in a communal, non-transient living arrangement. The facility shall consist of separate sleeping, bathing, and common living spaces.
And what I'm focusing on is, I read separate sleeping to be separate sleeping, separate bathing, and then a common living area.
I see
So my point is, I read that as having separate bathing area for each separate sleeping area.
I understand how it could possibly read that way. That was not the intention. The intent was to have your sleeping areas and then communal living areas to include the proper number of bathroom facilities. This language was inserted the way it's reading now to ensure we didn't get a barrack style layout. So I understand where you're coming from. Because I was involved with it in the ordinance, I didn't read it that way, and we haven't applied it that way.
Who determines intent?
I would say the zoning administrator or the person who's reviewing the application is responsible for that. I don't imagine there would be a problem revising the language if there's proposed language that you or this board feels would be.
My
But that-
personal feeling, if there's any ambiguity, you take it out and make it so it's not ambiguous. But that may just be how I was taught English versus other people. Okay. Next question is, this might go toward a building inspector, but the question is, can you have a bedroom where the only access to that bedroom is through another bedroom?
You cannot, and I don't believe that is included in either of these floor plans.
Could you bring that back up on the screen, please?
Okay, so I have the first floor up now. Try to enlarge it and get it.
I'm particularly talking about that room right there.
There's no door.
There is no door here.
So that is not a room where somebody can sleep.
This is, let me enlarge it. This is a sleeping room. As you can see, it's titled bedroom. So you could have, let's see, based upon the 184 square footage, you could have multiple occupants. Yes, you could have people sleeping in this area and people sleeping in this area. And there is this pass-through here. This is not closed off. It cannot be closed off. So there is.
So that's considered one
egress.
room?
It is. Yes,
And
sir.
It also appears to have a wider space, just looking at dimensionally, a wider space of opening than the doorway opening. If I'm looking at it correctly.
You look at the one above it, you mean, you sort of can
Probably 5 foot.
compare the
5
two.
foot
From
over.
here
Yeah.
to here,
Uh-huh.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next thing is, can you explain definition of the section 35K as it relates to 70 square feet for the first unit and 50 for every other unit? My reading is that you can have a unit of 70, and then every other unit has to be a minimum of 50. And does this proposal meet that standard, or am I reading the definition wrong?
The way I read the definition and the way it was intended was you could have multiple occupants in one room, in one sleeping room. The first occupant needed 70 square feet. And then any additional occupant in that same sleeping room would require 50 square feet.
So that only applies to a room, not any other room? There is no definition for square footage for any other room. Is that correct?
Well, each sleeping room, so per one room, you would have your 70 and then your additional 50 as required. And then when you went to another sleeping room, you would start over. 70 for the first, 50
And then
for
if it-
any additional.
For each person. So, okay. We did not get any information, physical information, that gave us dimensional requirements. So it may have been a number in there that says something, but how are we as the board to determine whether what was submitted meets that definition? Unless I'm missing something, I don't see any any drawings that says 14 feet by 10 feet or 15 feet by 20 feet. I see where there's a number, but I don't know if that number's correct or not.
Okay, so you do have this number here, which is giving you
Right.
the area. Understood, you don't have dimensions on there. You've got it reiterated here. And if I'm not mistaken, we do have down here the scale.
Right.
So the dimension is not in black and white, but it is fairly easy to take this scale and apply it to this rendering to verify the area.
And that satisfies staff, obviously, or you wouldn't have done it. But as a layperson and not knowing anything about stuff like this, how would a board member know without somebody giving the calculations? Not the calculations, but the dimension where they can actually physically look at it? Or are we at a point where we should accept those numbers as they are?
If I may, the scale is indicated, so I think the dimensions are there. The scale is, I think you have the dimensions of the building on the information that's presented.
There's a scale, but generally, I like to just see the numbers of the room, the length and width of the room, not just a box that says 181.
If it's the board's desire for us to use that scale to indicate the length and the width of the room, we can start to do that.
Okay. And then the last question I have is, do we have sufficient information to make a determination that there is appropriate wastewater on site today while we look at this conditional use?
My interpretation and my position is that, yes, you do have adequate information in that this discussion has been had with Jack Fly. They are in the process of designing it. But as a checks and balances, this board can rest assured that this project does not move forward if it does not have a building permit, and a building permit cannot be issued without that approval. Furthermore, this is not a vested right. This has a expiration date of 1 year from whatever day you approve it. And so if we do not have the requisite approval within 1 year, you're seeing this again.
So you're saying the board has an absolute guarantee that when we make our findings of fact, which we have to do, that we have absolute information to determine that a finding of fact that we have to make today, that we have adequate information that there is sufficient wastewater site to approve this project as presented?
I am, but I feel like if it is a concern of the board, you can impose your condition, because it is a conditional use permit, to state prior to issuance of building permits, a approved wastewater permit from the Dare County Health Department be provided. If that,
I understand you say we can do certain things. My value is, I don't have the information.
I think staff's made their presentation, and trying to put staff in a position of guarantee. I think they've given you the information, and I think it's up to the board to determine whether or not you have sufficient information. That's not for Kelly to determine.
I agree, but I want to make sure that staff has their opinion about it, and I understand what staff's opinion is now.
We have a recommendation that we've made, and that's based on the interpretation and the opinion of staff.
Thank you.
Let me, if I may help on this particular point, or maybe I can help. I think the finding that Mr. Fuller is referring to is finding number 1, which is that the applicant has met the requirements of the Town of Nags Head zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance, and other applicable ordinances. And I think the issue that he's pointing to here is whether the board has sufficient evidence to determine that the applicant has met the requirements of other applicable ordinances. Am I articulating your concern?
You are spot on.
Okay, I think that's the issue, and this is, since this has come up this morning, I've taken a look at it. So far, I don't find anything that requires that the applicant have, in any of the applicable ordinances, that they have a building permit, I'm sorry, a permit from the health department issued at this stage. What I do find is a requirement, and I think this is what Ms. Wyatt was referring to, a requirement that that any application for a building permit, a change of use, or certificate of compliance be accompanied by plans for sewage disposal, and that no building permit will be issued until the health department permit has been issued. So I think what Ms. Wyatt is saying is that they received sufficient evidence based on the presentation of plans to satisfy the requirements at this stage, but that before any building permit would be issued, the applicant will have to have the issued permit from the health department. Is that your position, Ms. Wyatt?
yes, sir.
Yeah,
Okay. I think that's the issue.
I think it's very clear, and I think she gave a very correct answer to my question.
Okay. All right. Does the board wish to receive any further evidence? Do you have any further questions, or do you need any further evidence at this point?
May I ask you a question, or would you ask
You
me
can.
later?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. With the statement that you just made, I understand your concern, but I know what the process is. Do we meet the findings of fact for number 1?
It's my opinion that you do have evidence to show that all applicable ordinances are met unless there is some other ordinance, which I haven't seen, that requires that an issued permit from the health department be obtained at this time. So at this stage of the proceeding, to obtain the conditional use permit, I don't believe that's a requirement. I think that's a requirement to get the building permit, but I don't think that's required at this stage, based on what I've seen.
And the point I want to make is, I understood what Kelly said. I understand what you say. I have a different opinion of that, and I think it comes down to opinions. And I don't have the information I need, and that's the point I'm trying to make.
All right. Any other questions? Anything further from staff at this stage?
No, sir.
Any further rebuttal evidence from the applicant, Mr. Caston? All right. At this time, we will conclude the evidentiary presentation on this matter, and the board may begin its deliberations. And just to reiterate, in order for the board to approve this application, you must make the 3 necessary findings that are listed in the staff memo. And of course, the board may also impose conditions that are reasonable conditions in light of the other requirements of the ordinance. You may begin your deliberations.
Okay?
Comment?
Yes.
I'd like to thank both staff and the attorney for clarifying for me the question about, while I understand the process, what was needed or not needed. I understand Commissioner Fuller's comments, but I'm prepared to make a motion.
May I ask another question before you do? Is adding a condition about some physical security an appropriate condition to add?
It only if the terms of the ordinance allowing this use reasonably relate to that requirement. So in other words, you would have to find that there is something in the requirements of the ordinance that allows this use, this conditional use, that would pertain to that condition.
And that's not there.
I don't see anything that relates to security at all in my reading of it, but
I just wanted to ask to see if we could.
yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, or would you like to make your motion and continue discussion?
I'll make a motion that we approve this conditional use application subject to the following findings of fact. One, the applicant has met the requirements of the Town and Ag Said zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance, and other applicable ordinances. Two, the use will not materially endanger the public health and safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted. And three, the use as proposed will not overburden the firefighting capabilities and the municipal water supply of the town.
And does that include the stormwater management measures?
Yes, it does include the proposal by staff that the stormwater management conveyances be corrected as per the original plan and recommended by the town engineer.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, do we have any further discussion?
One, that I came in very concerned about the health department permit and what part of the process, and I think the attorney really clarified, as well as Kelly for me, that process of moving forward. Not trying to put the health department in a box, but obviously there is a process, one of approving an application, and then the next process of a building permit. You have a step one and you have a step two, and in between, there's a lot of work that goes into both of those.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay, motion carries.
Can we have a quick break before the next one?
Okay, and we'll take a break to have the mayor come back in the room for a 10-minute break.
Okay, the board will please come back to order. Having enjoyed my break, I'm glad the rest of the board also got one. Mr. Leidy, public hearing number 2, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, and excuse me. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Walters, for standing in my absence.
All right, at this time, we will begin the public hearing to consider the conditional use site plan amendment submitted by Verizon Wireless for the placement of concealed building mounted wireless communication facilities on top of the Comfort Inn South. This property is zoned CR, commercial residential, and is located at 8031 South Old Oregon Inlet Road. Again, for the record, I want to remind the board that on this matter, the board conducts a quasi-judicial proceeding, which means that certain rules and requirements apply. The board's decision must be based on competent, material, and substantial evidence in view of the record as a whole. Those who are presenting evidence must be sworn or affirmed by the town clerk. The board's decision must be based only on evidence that's presented during this hearing. And in addition, when the board sits as a quasi-judicial panel to decide a conditional use permit or site plan amendment, it is imperative that no member participate in or vote on any quasi-judicial matter in a manner that would violate any affected person's constitutional rights to an impartial decision maker. Impermissible violations of due process include, but are not limited to, having a fixed opinion prior to hearing the matter that is not susceptible to change, undisclosed ex parte communications, and having a close familial, business, or other associational relationship with an affected person or a financial interest in the outcome of the matter. Previously undisclosed ex parte communications which have not caused you to develop a fixed opinion may be cured through disclosure of the facts or information obtained on the record. A party or member of the Board of Commissioners, including the member at issue, may object to any member's participation for lack of impartiality. If an objection is raised to a member's participation and that member does not choose to recuse himself or herself, the remaining members shall by majority vote rule on that objection. So at this time, I ask whether any of you have any conflicts which would potentially keep you from being an impartial decision maker, or have you received any undisclosed communications or information that you need to disclose at this time? All right. The procedures for this proceeding include the following. The applicant has the right to question any witnesses and to offer any rebuttal evidence. The board members may ask questions of any witness at any time, but if the board has any questions for any witness, those must be asked during the public hearing. Just let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be glad to enable you to ask them. So as we begin this process, those individuals who will present evidence in connection with this application, if you will please approach the town clerk so that she may administer the oath. All right. And at this time, we'll begin with the presentation of the staff's analysis presented by Kelly Wyatt.
Thank you. As noted, the applicant in this request is Verizon Wireless. They are seeking to install concealed building-mounted antenna on the rooftop of Comfort Inn South. Comfort Inn South is at 8031 South Old Oregon Inlet Road. It's in a CR zoning district, and this use is a conditional use in the CR district. I do want to apologize for one thing in your staff report. Listed under flood hazard zone of property, I had spelled out here that it was in a VE zone, and that the generator equipment must be elevated to a certain height. Since the time that this left planning board, due to some lot coverage concerns, the applicant has removed the request to have a generator pad with a generator on site. Rather, they have gone to having a plug available. In the instance of an emergency, they can either bring in a generator, or they've also proposed a battery pack on the rooftop. But the information about elevation of generator equipment is no longer necessary, so I do apologize. That's still in your packet. Moving forward with that, and just transitioning right into lot coverage, just as I had noted, there is no permanent ground equipment that is going to generate additional lot coverage on this site. Everything is being proposed on the roof of the Comfort Inn South. Here is the site plan for the property. This is the existing hotel, and this is the elevator shaft. This is the vicinity of where they are looking at installing the equipment. The second page of your application is sort of a blow-up of that. The third offers some topographical information. This was more necessary initially, where we were looking at LP gas tanks for the generator, but now that the generator is not proposed, the LP tanks are not going to be installed, and so CAMA is no longer an issue in that regard. So to best discuss, this sheet is probably the best in terms of visuals. As I noted, no additional lot coverage. Everything is within the existing footprint. Building height is unchanged. We have the elevations of the parapet wall and the elevator shaft. See the parapet wall here? This is the elevator shaft. This is essentially looking from the front of the building. And here are your proposed antennas. There's 3 of them. 1 on the north and 2 on the south. And by the definition, included in the definition is the regulation that they have to adhere to for concealment We can see here how essentially they're concealing these antennae with just an extension of the architectural elements of the elevator shaft. So visually, this just looks like a minor bump out to your elevator shaft. And again, this concealment is running along here and is enclosing the antennas here. So the antennas, the concealment of the antenna clearly meets the definition of concealment, which was included in your packet. The other thing that is happening, as I mentioned, because they are not going to have a generator on site, they do need to have a cabinet to hold their batteries in case there's an emergency. So this is where the cabinet is going to go. It's a small cabinet, and it's going to be tucked behind the existing concealment that was already being provided for the antenna. So this little cabinet holding the batteries, that is not going to be visible either. That is going to be concealed. And so moving on, there's an equipment cabinet, which is here. This equipment cabinet, in talking with the applicant, it cannot have an architectural concealment around it. It needs to be open. So what they have done is they have matched the color of the Comfort Inn South, and they are going to paint this box, this cabinet, the same color as the principal structure, the Comfort Inn South. This, it looks in terms of dimensions very similar to a refrigerator. So when you're thinking about depth and height, that is what this is going to look like. Staff had a hard time visually interpreting what that was actually going to be. So the applicants took it upon themselves to construct, just out of plywood, the dimensions of this cabinet. They installed it on the top of the Comfort Inn South for a couple of days, and staff had an opportunity to go by and look at it. And we included those pictures in your packet. So before I move on from this site, essentially this is the request. 3 antenna mounted to the elevator shaft with this proposed concealment, a small cabinet to house the batteries, which is concealed, and then the equipment cabinet, which does not have architectural concealment but will blend in with the appearance of the structure. So as I noted, we felt it was probably best to have some photographs to depict this. So this is the equipment cabinet. It's being painted white here, but this will turn into that sandy orange color of Comfort Inn South. Our next picture here, as it loads. I articulated this in your packet, but essentially none of this equipment is visible from the property or from any of the property boundaries or any of the adjoining properties. It's not until you come north to about Whalebone that you start to see that equipment cabinet. It's hard to see in this picture, but there you go. That's it right there. As you drive south, the parapet wall rises up, and you really don't see that at all. But it's at this point at Whalebone where you start to visually see the cabinet. These pictures are just from on the property. You can see at this point, it goes away. You don't see that cabinet anymore. And this is, the definition states that it shouldn't be visible from the property boundary. This is on the property boundary. And when you go around the entire property boundary, due to the parapet wall, you don't see the cabinet. Again, just visually, also from a different angle. You can see the elevator shaft here and the parapet wall, but you don't see the cabinet. So with that, we do find that in terms of the architectural concealment and the blending into the existing structure, that this proposal does meet those requirements. There's no need for additional parking for this. There's no need for any additional buffering or landscaping. There's no proposed lighting at this time. There's no signage associated with this. There's no need for Dare County Health Department approval. With no addition to lot coverage, there is no change in stormwater management or traffic circulation. As always, the fire prevention code will need to be adhered to, and that will come as part of the building application review prior to issuance of a building permit. Public Works approved the proposal as it's been presented. So based upon staff's review of this and working with the applicant to give us a good visual of what this would appear to be like once constructed, staff would recommend approval of the conditional use vested right site plan amendment, noting that it is a vested right. It is following the procedures for a conditional use, which by virtue of a vested right, it should, and it does grant them a period of 2 years to begin initiation of the project, as opposed to 1, which is standard for the conditional use. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have of staff, and we have several folks from Verizon here. If you have questions of them.
All right, are there any questions for Ms. Wyatt? Yes, Mr. Fuller.
Two, is any of the construction that would be done east of the CAMA setback line?
It is not.
Okay. Number two, does either the concealment wall or the antenna have any conflict with the town height ordinance?
It does not. Neither the antenna nor the concealment or the cabinet extend beyond the existing elevator shaft. It does go slightly above the parapet wall, but Town Code Section 48-81B5, exclusions from height is the title of that, says that structural elements used to conceal the antenna shall not exceed more than 15 feet above the roof line or the building and shall be located away from the roof edge in order to be invisible from the ground. Staff finds it compliant with that. The parapet wall comes to an elevation of 67.6, and the highest element that they are proposing in this scenario is 76.5. So it falls beneath that 15 feet.
I'm confused, but I'll let it go.
I apologize.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Wyatt? Does the applicant have any questions for Ms. Wyatt?
No.
All right.
Not this time.
Thank you very much. Anything further from staff,
No,
Kelly?
sir.
All right. At this time, the applicant may present evidence in connection with the application.
Good morning, Mayor Cahoon, members of the Board of Commissioners. My name is Steve Romine. I'm a local attorney for Verizon Wireless. I have offices at 999 Waterside Drive in Norfolk. I'm here today on behalf of the applicant. I have with me David Beniamino, who is the zoning manager for Verizon Wireless. Before I get started, I want to thank Kelly for that excellent presentation. I'll try not to be redundant or too repetitive. It's a privilege to be here today, and I thank you for your time. As you may or may not know, in the general wireless industry, there's been a tremendous increase in demand and usage. And because there's such an increase in demand and usage, we have to continue to provide our services through our physical structure. We don't try to build towers or to add metal to this landscape when there's a possibility to co-locate on an existing structure like we have here today. So this is a good situation where we can provide additional antennas to increase the capacity coverage we need in this area and improve service to our customers. We've entered into a lease with Dare Hospitality for a spot on the roof at 8031 South Old Oregon Inlet Road on the Comfort Inn South, and we've got that in place. We propose to install and operate these concealed antennas, as Kelly mentioned to you, in a manner as shown on the plan. The property is zone CR, and it allows for this with a use permit, and that's why we're here today asking you to approve our use permit. As shown in the plan, the 3 antennas that will be attached to the elevator shaft will be behind a concealed wall, and that'll be painted and will look just like the elevator shaft today. That is a very positive thing. When we went through the generator conversation, it became evident that we really didn't want to have to go to a new generator in the ground, so we decided to go with a battery pack, which will sustain the site for 8 hours on an outage. That battery pack will be attached, as she showed, to the wall, but it'll be below that concealed wall, so you won't be able to see it beyond the parapet as well. So we added that battery pack between planning board and now and got rid of the land-based generator, so we didn't have any lot coverage or CAMA type issues. There is a plug that will be available at the ground level, so when we run out of battery pack and the site has to go down, we can bring in generators that can plug in to that plug to provide power so we can continue to service the site. So that's the option we went with there. So, and simplistically, I said I didn't want to be redundant. There's 3 things I want to mention real quickly. One is we comply with the height limits. To Mr. Fuller's comment there, the height of the building is 67, let me get my exact numbers here, is 67.6 feet. The elevator shaft is at 85 feet. These are all somewhat grandfathered heights under your ordinance. And as provided, our top height on our facility and our equipment is at 76.5 feet. So we will not be 15 feet above the 67.6. We're approximately 10 feet above that. So we meet the town height issue or height requirements, and we comply with that. And we do not increase any nonconformity that may currently exist because of the use of the hotel. We don't increase lot coverage. And secondly, or lastly, most importantly, we meet the concealment standards as set forth in your ordinance. And I think they were displayed earlier. But essentially, the antennas will be behind a wall that matches the elevator shaft. The one equipment cabinet that is shown there, the reason why we did it the way we did was if we were going to put those radio heads and that equipment in a manner outside a cabinet on the roof, it would take too much concealment, and we'd have to bore holes in the roof, and it wouldn't be very difficult to meet wind load standards on the Outer Banks to conceal that equipment exposed like that. So we decided to go with the cabinet structure that we have and use at other sites, and that's why we ended up painting it the way we did, and it's shown in the pictures you have in your package. Now, the good thing is that we meet your concealment standards because at the property line, there's nothing that you can see on that roof that we're adding. Now, obviously, that one site on the road going further down, you'll be able to see that cabinet, but you also can see the steps and everything else in that roof from that vantage point as well that are currently there. So I don't think it really adds any clutter to that roof. I think for those reasons, and I'll stand by for questions, we have no parking impact, no landscaping impact, no lighting. We think it's a good application, and we definitely need the coverage, and this is a willing landlord, so we look forward to serving citizens and businesses in this area. And for these reasons, I would ask that you approve item G2, our use permit for Verizon Wireless, and I'll be happy to stand by for questions. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Romine. Any questions for Mr. Romine? None? All right, thank you. Any further presentation or evidence from the applicant at this time?
I have David Benimino here mainly to answer questions on the technical side if they arise, but I think we're fine for now.
Does any member of the board have any questions for Mr. Benimino from a technical standpoint? If so, this would be an appropriate time to ask them. All right.
Thank
you.
you, sir. Thank you.
All right. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment, who is sworn, but wishes to comment on this application? Does the board wish to receive any other evidence in connection with this application? All right. Anything further at this time before we conclude the hearing? All right. At this time, we will conclude the public hearing on this application, and the board may begin its deliberations. I will point out that in order for the board to approve this, you must make the 3 required findings that are listed at the end of the staff report.
I'll make a motion, we approve as presented.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve as presented.
With the
Any-
findings of fact.
With the findings of fact.
Yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Leidy, third and last public hearing.
Thank you very much, and at the risk of sounding repetitive, I do want to make sure that for the record I have introduced the hearing appropriately. At this time, we will begin the public hearing to consider a conditional use application submitted by Ms. Sarah Letchford for a massage therapy facility to be located in an existing office/retail group development, South Beach Plaza. The property is zoned C2 General Commercial and is located at 2420 South Croatan Highway. Again, I will remind the board that the board sits as a quasi-judicial body in considering this application. The board's decision, therefore, must be based on competent material and substantial evidence in view of the record as a whole. Those presenting evidence must be sworn or affirmed by the town clerk. The board's decision must be based only on evidence that is presented during the hearing. And in addition, it is important that no member participate in this if they might have a potential conflict of interest or if they have received ex parte information. I will again remind you that the impermissible things that would occur here would be having a fixed opinion prior to hearing the matter that is not susceptible to change, undisclosed ex parte communications, or having a close familial, business, or other associational relationship with an affected person or a financial interest in the outcome of the matter. Previously undisclosed ex parte communications which have not caused you to develop a fixed opinion may be cured through the disclosure of the facts or information obtained on the record. A party or member of council, including the council member at issue, may object to any member's participation for lack of impartiality. If an objection is raised to a member's participation and that member does not choose to recuse himself or herself, the remaining members shall, by majority vote, rule on the objection. So at this time, I ask whether anyone has any conflicts which would potentially keep you from being an impartial decision maker, or has anyone received undisclosed communications or information that you would like to disclose at this time? All right, none. The procedures that will apply here will be as follows. The applicant has the right to question any witness and to offer rebuttal evidence. Board members may question any witness at any time. It is important that if you have any questions that you ask those during the public hearing. Just let me know if you have any questions and we'll make sure that we get those answered. All right. At this time, I ask that all those who may present evidence in connection with this application to please approach the town clerk so that you may receive the oath.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
All right, at this time, we will begin the evidentiary presentation with the staff's analysis presented by Zoning Administrator Kelly Wyatt.
Thank you again. As you stated, the applicant is Sarah Letchford. She's here today. She is requesting to operate a massage therapy facility within the existing South Beach Plaza, which is located at 2420 South Croatan Highway. There's multiple structures on that side, and I apologize I don't have an aerial to depict this, but she's looking at unit E and F. And those units that she's interested in, it's the structure behind the food court, and it's the structure that has the laser tag existing in there now. She's looking at the 2 units south of laser tag. So to, just for perspective, those are the units that she's interested in. Everything that's being proposed is internal. There's no increase in the footprint. There's no increase in lot coverage. Massage therapy facilities are a conditional use within this zoning district, and there are a couple of things that have to be met in order to proceed with the conditional use. When you look at, I believe it is chapter 12 of our town code, there has to be a background check completed by our police department for someone to become a massage therapist. That letter has been included in your packet. The background check has been completed. There were no issues found with moving forward in that respect. The second piece is that a privilege license must be issued by the town in conjunction with this request. The town can do so, but it requires a separate authorization, as was noted in your summary sheet, from this board to direct staff to issue that privilege license. Between that section of the code being written and now, it's no longer called a privilege license. It's mostly just a registration with the town, but it suffices and it does the same thing. So it would essentially be having the town staff issue the appropriate registration for a massage therapy facility. No lot coverage issues at hand. This was developed as office retail group development. So when you look at the parking standard that was applied for these 2 units, there's actually excess parking for the uses in which it was originally constructed for, to this request for a massage therapy facility. So existing parking on site is adequate. There's no need to provide additional parking based upon the use that's being requested. With no change to the site, there's no need to look at traffic circulation. There's no issues with stormwater management. The signage, the freestanding signage that exists on site, it's 164 square foot sign. My assumption is that there would not be any addition to the area of the sign, but a new panel inserted. So there's essentially no additional signage being requested with this. Based upon staff's review, we recommend approval of the conditional use application and would request that the board also make a motion to approve the privilege/registration license for this application. Again, Mrs. Letchford's here if you have any questions.
All right, does the board have any questions for Kelly? All right, do you have any questions for Ms. Wyatt, Ms. Letchford?
No, but I was going to speak.
All right, that's your chance now.
Morning. My name is
Morning.
Sarah Letchford. I do actually have a copy of that if anybody wants to see exactly or is confused of where it is in the shopping center. I know it's just here, not there, but I have that with me.
You could provide that to Ms. Thuman, who I think can display it for the board to see.
So I basically just an unscripted, brief comment wanted to say that this whole process is new to me. However, the business is not. So I've already been in business for 7 years, and I'm very familiar. Although I'm unfamiliar with this process, I do respect the process. But just basically that I would continue, even though this is an expansion of the business as far as location and more square footage for us. Not necessarily more employees, but there will be more use, in this area. But I'm very familiar with the Code of Ethics from the National Board of Certification for Massage Therapy and also the state requirements. So I continue to uphold those. I have, I think not many know me professionally, but have maybe seen me, locally in the community. But I did brand my business on professionalism and quality work. So I just wanted to make a brief statement that there's a lot of maybe misconception on what massage therapy is. So we no longer refer to ourselves as masseuse, and there's a reason for that, and massage parlors as well. So just to kind of guarantee or solidify to you that this location is a professional environment and only, professional clientele and subcontractors as is will be working there in and out of the facility. I think that's it.
All right, any questions for Ms. Letchford?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, is there anyone else who wishes to present evidence in connection with this application? Does the town wish to receive any further evidence on this matter? All right, anything further, Ms. Letchford, at all? All right, thank you very much. All right, at this time, we will conclude the public hearing, and the board may begin its deliberations on this application. Again, I would point out that in order to approve this, you need to make the standard 3 findings listed at the end of the staff memo.
Thank you. Not hearing any discussion, a motion might be in order.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this conditional use and the registration, the town-required registration, to approve that also in addition to the findings of fact.
Thank you. We have a motion
Second.
and a second. The motion is to approve with the findings of fact and for the town to issue the required registration. All of those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Whitey, for running those public hearings. Thank
They
you.
got faster as we went forward, didn't they?
Very good. All right, our next item of business, we're moving into old business, is a report on West Morning Dove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Phil Lloyd at 2820 Pamlico Avenue is here that can speak specifically to the request, but I wanted to just introduce the map and give you kind of an understanding of where we are. This is the Vista Colony neighborhood. The star on this map indicates the western portion of Morning Dove Street where a right-of-way exists. Mr. Lloyd's property is there. Well, pointer is there. When Vista Colony was, the subdivision was platted, you'll see Barn Street to the north there. It stopped there, I guess it stopped there where indicated originally, and Morning Dove was going to come all the way through to Lost Colony. When this subdivision was platted before Health Center Drive, and when the Britt Haven was put into place, it made more sense to run Barn Street all the way through to Health Center so that the ambulances had a straight shot getting back and forth. So that's my assumption as to why maybe this right-of-way was never paved or utilized as a street. So the request that Mr. Lloyd can speak to would be to initiate the process if the board so chose, that's spelled out in 168-299 of the general statutes, that would, it very prescriptively lays out the steps that the board has to go through to advertise this and make a notification, and the advertising is specific, time specific, and then a public hearing's held. But if Mr. Lloyd wants to speak specifically,
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Phil Lloyd. My family resides at 2820 South Pamlico Avenue in the Vista Colony West subdivision. We've lived in this address since 2015 and have undertaken substantial improvements of the property. We love where we live and we seek additional improvements to our property and our neighbourhood. I'm here today to request the Town of Nags Head Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution declaring its intent to permanently close the unused and unimproved right-of-way, also known as West Morning Dove Street, adjacent to my residence. My neighbour Aaron McCall, another adjacent property owner, supports my request for the town to permanently close this unimproved right-of-way. This unimproved right-of-way is adjacent to the total of 4 residents and connects South Pamlico Avenue and South Lost Colony Drive. While this property is platted as right-of-way, it has never been used as such. So my points to consider for the board. Repeating myself, this right-of-way has never been used as a road. It is not needed as a means of ingress or egress. The right-of-way has never been paved. The right-of-way is not maintained by the town. It is overgrown and unsightly and devalues my residents. It is my understanding that the town does not have any utilities underneath this right-of-way at this time. It is my guess that at the time of the original development in the 1970s, it was not anticipated that a large area of Vista Colony West, the Nature Conservancy property behind the Lost Colony houses, would remain undeveloped. So the original plat is not consistent with its current use. The lots located on South Lost Colony Drive, adjacent to the right-of-way, abut a large parcel of undeveloped land owned by the Nature Conservancy, so there will be no further development and thus no need for a right-of-way in its current location. Vista Colony has no more room to expand as the Nature Conservancy blocks any western growth. Therefore, the utilities that exist on the current streets will not need to be altered. There are no property taxes being paid in this property. It is my understanding that the town has no current or future plans for this unimproved right-of-way. Considering the foregoing points, I propose that the highest and best use of this unimproved right-of-way would be for the town to permanently close it so that the adjacent property owners can maintain it and pay taxes on it. It is the public's interest to permanently close this unused and unsightly right-of-way. If my request is approved, I envision making further improvements to my property, including removing some of the pine trees to free the live oaks, which would increase my yard for my. I envision making further improvements to my property, including removing some pine trees to free the live oaks, which would increase my yard for my dogs, and possibly installing a swimming pool. I have worked hard on renovating my home and continue to work hard at making it a home to be proud of. I would like to say that it is fast becoming one of the nicest houses in the neighbourhood. I take pride in my home, and if I can obtain a portion of this unimproved right-of-way, then I continue with my improvements, which in turn benefit the town. Alternatively, if the board does not approve going forward with the resolution, then I request that the town consider reducing my side setbacks. Thank you.
Well, one other thing I'd add is that the dimensions of this property do not meet the minimum lot coverage for a single-family dwelling. I believe it's 15,000 square feet for a single-family dwelling, and this property, all calculated, is 12,000 square feet, 60 by 200. So.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions while we have the petitioner at the podium? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If not, for the purposes of starting discussion, would anyone offer a motion?
May I ask a question first?
Absolutely.
Okay. The side yard setbacks, how
15.
how much may they be reduced?
I'd ask Benny Garman to confirm this, but I believe 3 feet, from 15 feet to 12.
10.
Yes, that's right, 3 feet, based on the current ordinance. That's available to them now.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Garman, in other neighborhoods, the setbacks are 10 foot. Why is this one larger?
The setback, this is actually considered a corner lot because of the right-of-way.
If we reduce this and didn't consider this a corner lot, what could the maximum or the least amount of setback be?
If it wasn't considered a corner lot, it would be 10, like everywhere else in the R2. That's correct.
Okay.
If I'm, administratively, you could approve 15 to 12.
Yeah, that's exists now. It's essentially what the setback is for this size lot.
What would be the process for reducing it to 10 feet?
Well, that would be a text amendment.
And that would apply to every corner lot.
It would just be based on how it's defined in the text amendment.
I mean, I think you'd have to consider what your intent would be in using that remedy to offer relief for this property and what relief it might offer for others.
Well, this is a different situation, whereas this is a paper street, whereas most corner lots are defined as corner lots.
Right.
I could not find any other paper streets. Do you know of any?
There are some. There's predominantly, I think, between the Beach Road and the bypass, there are.
There was one beside the first public hearing today,
Right. Down.
as an example.
Well,
There are a number,
yeah, but I
there are a
mean,
number of public,
most
paper
of them-
streets in town.
Yeah, right beside the old Lances is
Dixie,
another.
I think, is the one.
But if you applied the text amendment to relate to a 10-foot setback on a paper street versus the current setbacks on a non-paper street, could that be,
Maybe.
could that be done? And then, I mean, that would, if we do a text amendment, it would have to take place for all paper streets, correct?
Correct.
And there are a number of paper streets on the east side of the beach road. Most of the beach accesses that we have were in paper streets, and there's still a number of paper streets on the east side of the beach road that we have not improved.
Right.
As an example of paper streets in town.
However, you could also address it differently, similar to what you're saying, by addressing it in a certain district that would not apply to the beach road, which is either C or CR.
I mean, this current situation, the folks living in that neighborhood have actually put solar lights up and use this as a pedestrian passage between the two streets. In his situation, if he does anything, he's got to come in with fill to adjust his property because there is a drop-off beside his fence. That's correct, right?
Yes.
Okay, so not that the board or the town wants to go in and put a walkway through there, but if we reduce the setbacks and he has the lot coverage and other property owners on that paper street have a lot coverage, then maybe they could do what they wish to do with their.
Okay. Commissioner Cahoon.
I'm not necessarily in favor of closing the paper street, but I am in favor of giving relief to the setback in this particular area. I'm not saying this lot, I'm saying area.
Yes, ma'am.
But I would be amenable to reducing setbacks through a text amendment.
Thank you. Commissioner Walters, any further comment?
I'm certainly not opposed to giving the administrative relief already allowed, or perhaps extending that. I do have concerns about abandoning town property. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the town will need 25 or 50 years from now. I don't know what technology needs will be there, or, space will be needed for anything. So I'm reluctant to, or
Right.
hesitant to abandon town
Right.
property.
Okay. Webb, do you-
I've not heard a compelling reason to give up any of the rights the town has, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. So what I've heard is, so far, is no interest in abandoning the right-of-way. I've heard some interest in giving the applicant and those adjacent property owners potential relief on setback that may or may not go beyond what's already permitted. So would a solution be that we ask staff to look at the situation at that and perhaps related paper streets, and to come back to us at a future meeting with a potential text amendment that would give some relief?
Could we limit it to certain districts rather than asking staff to look at it townwide?
Yes, absolutely.
Because the oceanfront's going to be entirely different.
Yes, I think that's right. And so if you have a potential solution, I think at this point, maybe a motion that sort of rolls all that together would be appropriate.
I make a motion that we ask staff to investigate a potential text amendment in R2,
That's where this is located.
and R2 as relates to paper streets and setbacks.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Discussion.
Yes.
If this is something we are talking about in generality, how come we haven't talked about it in generality to begin with? Why are we bringing it up after we have a specific thing on the table that would give only this person relief? I just don't understand why this is coming up like it is now if we're not talking about this particular piece of property.
I don't think my motion phrased it as this particular piece. I think I proposed it as a zoning district. Because I don't know how many more or not paper streets there could be.
Right. So part of what we would hear back from staff is what the potential import of this would be district-wide. Then in that case, I would ask for a vote on the motion. And Karen, would you help me out? Would you restate that motion, please?
I have to ask staff to investigate a potential text amendment or two as relates to paper streets and setbacks
In R2.
in R2.
In R2. Okay. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. So the next item on our agenda, item I, reports and recommendations from the Planning Board and Planning and Development Director.
Good morning. Happy to provide an update on the Focus Nags Head UDO. Same as the last meeting, pretty much accepted this point. The UDO documents, the draft articles are being reviewed or currently by the technical committee. So we've received draft articles 5 and 6, the appendix and the table of permitted uses. Staff has undergone a review and given feedback. Now the committee's reviewing and we'll meet on January the 29th, Monday, January the 29th at 1 p.m. To discuss the committee's concerns about those draft articles.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have questions for Holly about that while she's at the podium? Okay. Thank you. The next sort of sub-item there is an appointment to the Focus Technical Committee. I can speak to that rather than asking staff. There are actually 2 appointments necessary there. You probably are aware that Commissioner Demers was the liaison to the technical committee. And so that position needs to be restored by a member of this board serving as a liaison. I have been serving on that committee, just so that you know that. There then would need to be 1 additional member appointed to that committee. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Mayor Cahoon to the liaison position and add Marvin Demers to fill the vacant position.
Okay, thank you. You hear a motion. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, I heard a couple of seconds. Any further discussion on that? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. I look forward to continuing to serve, and I thank you for leaving Mr. Demers. His experience to this so far in the process will be helpful as we continue to wrap that up, rather than bringing somebody new on board in the middle of that or leaving that seat vacant. Our next item of business is new business, and the first there are committee reports. Do we have committee reports this morning? Yes, Commissioner Cahoon.
One, the business committee met in December, and one of the made some recommendations, as you see, for public hearing and so forth, but also started a discussion after consultation with you about housing, workforce housing, just throwing around ideas.
Okay, great. Good. And we know that that's an issue, and I think we're going to probably hear from the chamber again shortly on that topic as well. Thank you. Any other reports? Yes, Commissioner Walters.
I would just like to say that I finished my term on the Dare County Tourism Board effective December 31st. And that was a 4-year term, and I'd like to thank the previous board and board members here that for giving me the opportunity to serve. I served as chair for the last 2 years, and it was very rewarding. And we have a new representative because our county commissioners have appointed Webb Fuller, Commissioner Fuller, to serve as our representative, and I know he will serve all of us in our town well on that board. So.
We hope.
Thank you for your past service, and thank you, Webb, for your current service, current and future service. Any other reports before we move to the next item of business? Then the next item is consideration of an amendment to the traffic control map.
Thank you, Mayor. The request before you today is an amendment to the town's traffic control map on East Gulfstream Way. This area is just to the south of the 7-Eleven and across the street from the Gulfstream beach access. As y'all know, Gulfstream beach access is very popular, not only our visitors, but really popular with our residents. During the summer months, the spots quickly fill up in the beach access, and once that happens, what we've seen is parking in the right-of-way occurs. Can we go back just 1 second, Roberto, so I can just show? This request is being brought forward by a letter which is included in your packet for the owner at 111 Gulfstream Way, which is written there in the driveway, Mr. Martin Matco, who's here today and can speak to you. He's had several conflicts over the years with people parking both east and west of his driveway that creates safety issues for himself trying to get in and out of his driveway, but also for people that are parking within the right-of-way as well. The cars stack up there, and people are trying to go by on the road going east and west. People are stepping out of the cars, and Mr. Matco can talk about the safety issues there. Can we go to the next one now? This photo was provided, this is in Mr. Matco's driveway. It was provided by Keith Sawyer, who manages the property for Mr. Matco. What you can see is that they line up basically from his driveway right on down to the stop sign, which is at Oregon Inlet Road and Gulfstream Way. In consultation with the manager and also with something Mr. Matco had brought up, is that they park east all the way to the stop sign, and then they actually go down the shoulder of Oregon Inlet Road, which creates a safety issues there as well. So in Mr. Matco's letter, you can see what he was requesting is an amendment to the town's traffic control map to allow this area to be a no parking area. And he is here this morning as well and can answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Do any members of the board have questions for Kevin or Mr. Matco? No. Okay, thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. In that case, is anybody cooking up a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Okay, motion to approve as presented.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor signify, oh, I'm sorry, let me pause. Is there any discussion necessary? Thank you. Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. It is a little after 12 o'clock. I'm going to estimate that we probably have close to an hour's business left, including the closed sessions. What is the board's pleasure with regard to a break that would be long enough for lunch?
I'm okay to keep on working. That's up to the majority of the board, though.
Okay.
Move forward.
Go ahead.
I'll go along with the majority of the board. I prefer to eat.
Um,
I have no problem with
I'm sorry.
that. Whatever, it doesn't make any difference.
That's fine. I mean, I can go either way, so.
You're making it tough on me.
Let's knock this out.
I'm sorry?
Let's knock this out.
Okay, move on. Thank you. Let's see, lost my place here. Items referred to us from the town attorney. Mr. Leidy?
Mr. Mayor, I have nothing to present at this time.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Town Manager?
Yes, so first just wanted to start with the presentation to give you an update, just a brief summary of where we are in the next development of Dowdy Park Phase 2, and I'm going to ask David Ryan, Town Engineer, to make that presentation to you.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Board of Commissioners. Just wanted to give you a brief overview of the progress of the development of Phase 2 and 3 of Dowdy Park. At their September 11th, 2017 board workshop, the commissioners reviewed and approved the Phase 2-3 Dowdy Park site development concept layout with several minor amendments noted at that time. Since that time, staff has been working with the design team consisting of CLH Design, Beacon Architecture, and Pace Collaborative towards developing a preliminary project schedule for this phase of development. The initial scope of work has commenced with the development of construction documents, which is currently in progress, and included in your board packet is a copy of the conceptual site development layout for your reference, as well as an overview of this draft preliminary schedule, which is noted up here on the screen. And just wanted to go through this very briefly. As it stands right now, we are in the midst of the preparation of the construction documents. This will then transition into the town review process with submission for technical review, planning board review, and Board of Commissioners review, which is tentatively scheduled for the beginning of April board meeting. From there through the bid phase, and then on to board consideration at the beginning of June for contract execution to commence with construction at the beginning of July. It is anticipated that construction will proceed over a 7-month period, and there could be landscaping that takes place after construction is complete, similar to the path that was followed with the Phase 1 Dowdy Park development. So I will entertain any questions that the board has in regards to this schedule as we move forward in the planning portion of this process. Yes, sir.
Quickly, on looking on this, the only comfort station is in the southwesternmost area, and as I see it, there's no comfort station anywhere on the east. Is that correct?
That is correct. Currently, we have temporary comfort stations over on the east side of the site, and they will be transitioned out once we have a permanent comfort station, as you had noted, there in the southwest corner of the site.
Just from a personal observation, I personally would like to see some comfort station over near that area where a lot of the old people will be sitting.
Are you counting yourself?
That's who I'm talking about.
That's why he's concerned.
I mean, I hate to think I'd be going to the shed that's over there. I mean, it's just a request that that if it's too far along, so be it. If it's not too far along, right next to the shed, and then with a probable drain field under the long game area, but it might be too far along. I would just hate people that are over there eating and doing whatever they're doing in a passive manner have to walk all the way over to the bypass to go to the bathroom.
Ben? Yes, Commissioner.
Mind if I speak? I was just going to say, many meetings were had regarding this matter, and placing the comfort station where it was the most cost-effective for the town. It's in the best location that kind of meets all of the needs. No matter where you put it, somebody's going to have to walk somewhere. We were trying to think about the overall population, all ages, but from a cost perspective and what is needed in the facility, this was the most appropriate and most cost-effective placement.
I wasn't talking about moving that.
I know you're talking about an additional one.
I'm talking about an additional.
Yeah.
I'm not sure funds are available for that
Yeah.
at this time.
One of the considerations I know was that this playground is a real heavy use, and having parents close to children who would be going to the restroom facility is what generated that. Not to say that there's not a need in the future for additional restroom facilities. I have a question. So I apologize. This did not occur to me when I looked at the package when I got it last week. It's a small construction project, but the comfort station, this is a lot of construction occurring in the warm weather months when the park is being used. All the materials for the comfort station have to cross the park, cross already improved walkways. There's really no other way to get there unless you bring materials off the bypass or across the school property. So I trust that attention's being given to how we import material and export construction waste there.
Yes, that has been a consideration. With Phase 1, we had developed a construction entrance right here on the west side. With the Phase 2 and 3 development, it lends itself well to having a construction entrance on this side so we can separate out the construction from the park use. And similarly, with the east side, we have 2 aprons off of Bonnet Street that we can go ahead and utilize, again, to try to keep construction concentrated in those areas of development and away from areas of use.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, just
Yes.
2 other
Yes,
things.
sir. Sure.
Quickly, I became aware that, and the police chief made me aware of this, that the Wildlife Commission is seeking public comment through February 9th on their draft coyote management plan. They developed a 187-page plan at the request of the General Assembly to address the impacts of coyotes, and specifically the threats that coyotes may pose to citizens, industries, and populations of native wildlife species in the state. So I see this as a good thing, that at least I'm going to see this as, you know, our residents, the board, other people have brought this concern forward, and this is an opportunity for the public to comment on this plan and what their concerns are. We've got this information up on our website. Roberta can send this information out to our social media and try and get it as, I'd encourage you all, you've all heard complaints from various people, to forward this and so that people can make comment and their voices and their concerns be heard. So I'm excited to see this and glad.
Yeah, and let's use every channel we have to make sure our concerned residents get to hear about this. Commissioner Cahoon?
Could the mayor write a letter expressing the town's concern about what we're encountering through our citizens as well?
I'd be happy to do that, yes. And have that entered into the record of that hearing. Yes, thank you.
We'll do that. And that just lastly, I wanted to ask the police chief, well, he asked if he could, and because it's such an important event, the Community Watch celebration that was held in December, that he feels the need to make sure he thanks those that contributed and participated, and I think he's right in doing so. So
Sure.
Thank you.
Just our annual Community Watch Luncheon was held on December the 7th at Bass Knight's Lone Cedar Cafe. We had a great turnout, just a great group of people. We had a lot of door prizes that were donated. And I'd just like to take a minute, if everybody could just review some of the businesses up there that contributed and made this event such a success. If you see them in the community, please thank them for their donation. Without their support, Community Watch would not be what it is, but our board members certainly did a lot of work to make this event a success, and we appreciate them and also the local businesses that contributed to it.
Thank you. I
Thank
was
you.
there. It was a very nice event.
Thank you.
Pretty fantastic.
That's all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is Commissioner Cahoon.
Thank you, Mayor. As you heard this morning, there is money available for the town to use to produce videos or buy equipment. After consultation with staff, the effort this year is to produce videos. The money cannot be carried from year to year, so we can't combine it with, say, an equipment request that would be more than the $10,000 use it next year. That's not the way it works. So I would ask the board to allow us to apply this grant of $10,000 to the town from the GovEd. I'm still going to call it GovEd.
Okay.
And begin producing some videos. And if anybody has any comments about videos, please send them through the mayor or the manager. I think Roberta has presented to you and the Mayor Pro Tem some ideas about videos.
Yes.
And I think it's probably a good thing to start doing.
It is. Thank you. So I think I can take that as a motion,
You can.
in which case a second would be appropriate.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion about the possible grant application? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
I have a couple more.
Yeah,
Are we
yes.
still under?
Yes, ma'am.
We've just recently had a huge weather event, and we're going to get an awful lot of requests about water bills and so forth. And I know the board adopted a revision to its water policy, but I think in times of, perhaps we didn't all pay as much attention to some of those revisions as possible. Maybe I didn't. But I think that we do not need to be making money off of other people's misery. I do not think that taxpayers should subsidize other people's misery, but I think we need to recoup the cost of our money plus a nominal fee as we did in the past of, say, the cost of the water plus 10 cents, but I do not think that we need to be charging the retail rate less 25 cents in this time, and I would like for us to authorize staff to amend that.
Thank you. Cliff, do you want to speak to that before we?
One possible solution or recommendation here would be that we could take this billing cycle, which would capture this freeze period that we just had when pipes would have been frozen. It would have been during this billing cycle. And we could adjust those leak adjustments on the previous policy. That's the cost plus 10%, 10 cents. And that, it's an administrative policy, so it's something with your approval, we can implement that fairly easily.
Would it, I guess the water rate would show, but I was thinking about those people that may not be opening up to find out the water leaks, because some people may have shut it off and shut it back on. It may end up having tons of leaks. That may be this water cycle, next water cycle, to account for people coming down and finding they've got huge leaks.
We can expand that.
I could support expanding that to just encompass anyone during this period that has experienced leaks due to frozen pipes.
And I'd like to even go broader and possibly at some time revisit what the board did as it related to changing the water rate, because I can give you a couple specific examples. There are a number of people that leave their home in the summer and come back and have no known breakage, but they might have a leak. And under the new policy, they would still be responsible for 100% of that water, if I'm correct.
75.
If they had
They have a leak that they don't know about.
and that's correct.
A toilet running.
Right.
And,
Well-
they've left and they don't come back. Under the current policy, they could have a huge water bill and there's no relief. And I think the way the policy was written originally was for the town not to make money off people, but if they had an issue, not a chronic issue per se, we might cause a leaking commode chronic, but if they don't know about it, how to, but the point was, we didn't want to make money, the town, off of somebody else's misery, exactly what Renee said. But the policy's written now where somebody could inadvertently miss something, and the town's going to be making a lot of money off of an individual. So, I agree with what Commissioner Cahoon's saying right now, but I also think the way the policy was written, I'm not sure, or the way the rules are now, don't need to be revisited.
Right. So if I could, because I was not here and I'm not familiar, so if I would first, with regard to Webb's point, ask staff to prepare a short memo just for my benefit to explain what the policy was, what the change was, and what the pros and cons of the two you see as the two approaches as a starting point for future discussion. And then I would ask for a formal motion to address what Commissioner Cahoon offered a few minutes ago.
I would like to make a motion that we authorize staff to revert to the previous policy to address the water leaks that are going to be found during this prolonged period of freezing for the next 2 water cycles.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to that to provide relief under the old policy for 2 cycles. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Commissioner Cahoon, do you have anything else?
One more. During this period of inclement weather, I'm not going to address what I consider the lack of DOT response locally, which was pretty horrendous if you tried to leave the northern part of the island, which does attach itself to the mainland as well. Unless I misread something, that 64 attached to the mainland, so it was cleared. I think 158 attaches itself. But the other thing that was very prevalent is that the state DOT website included no information whatsoever about road conditions. And also, whereas the Virginia website was extremely helpful, and that Virginia DOT 511 answered and had information, our 511 didn't even answer. There were several people here that were trying to find out road conditions.
Right.
Couldn't even get 511 to answer, so I would ask the manager or the mayor to contact DOT about their lack of 511 and website failures.
Thank you. We will do that. Between Cliff and I, we will be glad to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go down the line. Mike, do you have anything? Okay, Commissioner Walters?
Yes, I'd like to, as you're all aware, actually all of the coast have pretty much been opened up to seismic testing and drilling recently. And I forwarded each of you an email, and many of you probably already received it anyway, from Matt Walker with Surfrider regarding the latest news out of DC regarding offshore drilling. A whole new comment period began on the 8th, and this time he says the stakes are even higher. All federal waters off North Carolina and the rest of the East Coast are on the table, including up to the 3-mile line. Previously there was a 50-mile buffer. It goes right up to the 3-mile line. The process is much more expedited, and there seems to be less interest in getting coastal input and more emphasis on just pushing the seismic testing and drilling. In the past, this board has taken great steps in opposing offshore drilling and seismic testing beginning in January of '89, again in 1995, '97, 2006, 2010, April of '14, and July of '14. Specifically with the seismic testing and also the drilling. So I would like to ask that this current board do the same, engage in the process, submit comments to BOEM. We encourage our citizens to do the same if they're so inclined. There's also only one meeting in each state regarding this matter. I believe ours is February 26th, and it is in Raleigh. It is nowhere along the coast. Previously, when this matter came up, we were able to contact Congressman Jones, and he helped us get a meeting on the coast. And Kill Devil Hills was a tremendous event, one of the hugest events ever in opposing offshore drilling and seismic testing. And then also, last April, when the state was here receiving comments on the matter, I was asked to go speak to them on behalf of the board because the mayor could not attend, and at that point, 129 East Coast municipalities and 1,200 local, state, and federal elected officials had formally opposed offshore drilling and/or seismic testing. In North Carolina, over 30 coastal communities had passed resolutions against offshore drilling and seismic testing. So I hope that this board will continue in that vein. It's going to be critical that we stay engaged with all of our partners in this matter. I believe South Carolina, many communities in South Carolina are considering, and perhaps California as well, considering joining a lawsuit to sue the government for kind of overreach in not respecting state rights in this matter. So, and then today, in today's paper, the Trump administration has decided that they're not going to drill off the Florida coast. So, there's no need for them to drill off of our coast either, is my position. They say that it is unique and it has been taken off the table. I would argue that we are equally unique. The waters off of Cape Point and Buxton have the largest, I believe, well, I'll have to go look back through documents, but I believe it is the largest area of marine mammals as far as feeding grounds in the world. So, I mean, where the Gulf Stream comes together, it's a feeding ground, it's where they mate, and we also have the North Atlantic right whale and many endangered species. So I'm just hopeful that we will continue in the same vein that we have in the past, stay engaged with any and all organizations that are opposed to damaging our very livelihood, our future, our commercial fishing, our recreational fishing, and our entire economy. So.
Thank you. I would certainly be interested in attending that hearing on February the 26th. Our board would meet before that. Is there any interest by this current board in restating a position with a fresh resolution?
I think a fresh resolution might need to include the word unique if that applied to Florida. I think we would be unique as well.
Thank you. So I would ask perhaps Commissioner Walters and staff to work on wording for a resolution and bring it back to our next meeting.
Happy to do that. May I add, they're also asking for specific comments, scientific data, specific data, and we have a great deal of that. We have experts within the state, Dr. Doug Nowacek, who is pretty much a world-known mammal expert. We can get the data to provide the comments needed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing that forward. Commissioner Fuller?
I have one thing, but it's going to be broken up into maybe 3 or 4 parts, if I may.
That's fine. Take your time.
And it does, and I'm going to come after Commissioner Cahoon and maybe make some little bit different things, but it's the same issue, which
Okay.
was the response the immediate response and the planning of the storm we just had, I guess the first thing I have to say is I really want to commend and thank NC Power and Pam Peckrin and all their group for pre-staging all the trucks that they did in case the power went off. I mean, they were prepared. They were here, they were prepared, they had a plan. It's obvious that whatever DOT's plan was, at least in my position, wasn't good enough. And my question really is how does the town interact before an event like this with DOT to ensure that we're ready for an event like this and that we actually implement that plan during a storm? And so the question really boils down to what did staff do in its pre-plan to implement what should have been done with DOT to ensure the town roads, but particularly 158 and 12 were clear during the storm?
Well, we communicate before. We're in some respects we're pre-coordinated. We have a plan that's implemented and it goes into place that's ready today for any future events. But we knew what DOT was going to pre-treat the roads and then they were going to get the equipment out as quickly as possible. But we, as a town, we didn't feel that we had the responsibility for them to do what they said they would do. So we didn't implement DOT's plan. We made sure that we communicated with them. We know how to get a hold of them. We're, first name basis and phone numbers to reach them when we needed to, but we didn't ensure that they did what they said they would do. We trusted that they would do what they said they would do.
I think, we have a couple of responsibilities in town that definitively rely on DOT. And I believe from a town standpoint, we have an absolute responsibility to maintain Barnes Street and Health Center Drive to Brithaven, whatever it's called, that road is free and clear, period. We can't get there unless DOT is cleared. The other thing is, we've got the major medical facility in northeastern North Carolina in the hospital, not toward Elizabeth City, you've got the hospital there. But from a healthcare standpoint, that road has to be clear both for the patients and for those people that work there. I mean, they work shifts, they have to be able to get back and forth. And I would request that the manager and the mayor further their relationship with their appropriate counterparts in DOT to ensure at least those facilities that require medical necessities are addressed. That's one point. But going to the next point is, I, as a board member, did not get any information from the town on anything we are doing. The only thing I got was what I could have gotten off the internet myself. What was in it by the time is stuff I already had from looking at the internet. And this is a little bit of a condemnation, but it's also something I want to make sure people understand. When people look at the internet and says the town is closed, we're not closed. We have essential personnel and we have non-essential personnel. I know police, I know fire, and I know public works was out there when the town was closed doing their jobs. I mean, police were coming to work, fire was coming to work, public works was actually probably doing, not talking about garbage, but probably doing more than they normally do, and probably we're gonna have overtime consequences because we were working. And at the same point in time, there were non-essential personnel that were working as well, because I saw them working. And so I really don't want to get the wrong word out to people that we are closed. I want to make sure that they know we're working, but there's certain non-essential services that are not going to be provided until we can provide those. And it's all a matter of public information, getting the right word out. And I just would like us to try to form a value that we let people know what we're doing, the best way we can let people know what we're doing to address what, they're sitting out there waiting for information. And I think we can do a better job of getting our information out to them of what we are doing. So, that being said, thank you for indulging.
Thank you, Webb. Appreciate that. And that would include all the commissioners knowing, all having a background on everything in our contact with the folks in our neighborhoods would be helpful. Okay. Any other comment from any commissioners before we come to, I'm sorry, I was about to go to closed sessions. I've got my own agenda. Excuse me. I have one item. And then we'll have a short break as we go into closed session here. You've all seen a letter that we have where a nomination has been requested from local governments for an appointment to the Coastal Resources Advisory Council. That letter's up on the screen. The letter indicates that there's been some weighting toward beach and oceanfront communities, and that they are throwing a wider net for membership. There are the same number of seats as there are counties, and I believe some counties have multiple representations and some counties have none at this point. So it would be appropriate for us to, as a board, to offer a nomination here, and so I will open the floor here for nominations for Coastal Resources Advisory Council.
I would say some of the request is a request to look more toward inland
Yes,
issues.
correct.
And I also have more of an interest in coastal issues.
Yes.
And with that being said, I think someone from like Currituck County
Right.
could fill that role that addresses our coastal issues that we similarly have.
Yes.
But also have a lot of the inland issues. And I don't think there's anybody from Currituck County currently serving on the advisory council. I'm not sure.
That is correct.
But if that is the case, confirmed by Commissioner Cahoon, I'd like to put Ike McCree's name in as a nominee from the town. He is the county attorney with Currituck County, and I think he would be an excellent person that would serve the 20 county coastal interests, but also represent a coastal, inland, and a northeast North Carolina interest.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I would nominate him.
I know Ike as well, and I would second that. I'm not going to second it. I would second that nomination, but I'm not. So we need a second. We need an appropriate second.
I will second that.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second to nominate Ike McCree for the Coastal Resources Advisory Council. Is there any discussion on this? Hearing none, then I would ask you, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Webb. That was a good thought. That brings us to our closed sessions. Mr. Leidy again.
First of all, with respect to the first closed session item, I recommend that the board initiate the appeal hearing in open session and before we go into the break. But as I understand this matter, it would be important for the board, or necessary for the board, to receive evidence in closed session in order to prevent the disclosure of certain confidential information. And so I recommend that we begin the appeal hearing, if the chief is present, and let him present his recommendation based on the appeal, and then the board should enter closed session. And I'm going to suggest we enter a closed session just for this particular item, come back out, let the board take action on the appeal, and then resume, go back to closed session for the other two purposes. That's my recommendation to the board.
All right, thank you. Then Kevin?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Leiter. Thank you, Mayor. On November the 30th, 2017, Ms. Urbano made application for a permit to drive a taxi for the town of Nags Head. In accordance with Town Code 46-86, subsection C, I denied the application after information was discovered during the background investigation, which showed that I could not give her a driver's permit. And that information can be given in closed session.
All right, thank you.
So in light of that, Mr. Mayor, I recommend that the board enter closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A1 in order to receive information which is confidential by law.
Okay.
So moved based on those appropriate statutes.
Okay, so that's, I have a motion then from Renee, so I'd still need a second.
Second.
Okay, before we vote on that, some folks are going to leave and not still be here after we come out of closed session. I want to let everyone know that this board will be having a retreat next week, next Thursday and Friday, to talk about the future of the town of Nags Head, to talk about some critical goals for us and how we intend to accomplish those over the course of our term here. And if you have thoughts, concerns, speak to one of your commissioners. Anything that might be appropriate to that kind of broad policy discussion would be appreciated. Thank you. Having said that, I will now ask for a vote on that motion. So all of those in favor of going into closed session for the purpose of hearing evidence, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We're in closed session. Okay. We're back in open session. Thank you. With regard to the first public hearing, and Mr. Leidy?
Yes, sir. The board did consider evidence which was confidential, and the only action they took was to recess.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think the board's, and I think you all are prepared to make a motion to table further consideration of this matter until the board's next regular meeting.
That's what I recall. So a motion to that effect would be in order to table this matter until our next meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. All right. You're welcome. And Mr. Leidy, we have two more closed sessions. So.
Yes, you do.
And I believe we can do both of these together?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You just need motions to go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A1 to approve and consider closed session minutes, as well as GS 143-318.11A5 in order to consider the potential acquisition of property located at 9828 East Surfside Drive.
Okay. Who wants to make that motion?
So moved.
So I have moved and seconded without repeating the numbers. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We are in closed session. We're back in open session. Thank you. Mr. Leidy, will you report from our meeting, please?
Yes, sir. The board did take action to approve closed session minutes and to open certain closed session minutes and to seal others. The board also took action to give instructions to the town manager and town attorney regarding the acquisition of property, but no other actions were taken.
Thank you very much. That concludes our closed sessions. Is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Motion to recess to our retreat.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. The motion is to recess until our retreat next week, and there was a second to that. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you all very much.